are live. Spoilers in this video, including for earlier entries in the franchise. Terminator 4 Salvation Thoughts film. So yes, this contains spoilers for the movie as well as for the first three. Yeah, even though the TV show did, every episode of the first two seasons, I'm saying this in case sometime in the future there's more than two seasons. Here's hoping. The first two seasons, every single episode of them had aired before this movie came out. I'm still not going to spoil very much of the show. There are probably people who have only watched the movies, not the TV show. So yeah, in case you're worried about that, I'm going to keep things fairly vague. And yes, it's a long video, but there are time codes for different sections in the description box. And since I've done other videos on the subject, for one thing, the links will be in the description box, or rather the link to the playlist where those videos are. And I am also going to try not to restate in this video what I said in those other videos. Now, let's see. I forgot to do, I guess, yeah. My own film critic rating for this is a 5 out of 10, and my personal rating is also a 5 out of 10. I'm not gonna give it less than a 5 out of 10 when the movie is technically competent, but I can't give it more than a 5 out of 10 when it doesn't really do anything. It does just not really get me emotionally involved, and I love Terminator, so, and I don't really have much of a problem with McG, so it's not that. I like the actors. I think that at least parts of the story are yeah, I think some of the script and direction is fine, at least competent. It's competent. But the movie just does not get me emotionally involved. At the end of it, yeah. So I can't give it more than a 5 out of 10. And yeah. Now, completely off topic, Explainiac just said, it's, obviously joking, Harley Keener might launch a line of potato guns. I don't expect everyone to love potatoes, but you can't deny they got appeal. Now, this is the first time I watched the entire movie since 2009. I watched some clips of it back in 2015 when Genesis came out, and I wanted to be able to compare. But this is the first time since 2009, and back then I watched it in the theater. And it's the first time ever that I watched the extended director's cut, which is the one that everything I'm going to be saying in this video is based on. I think I noticed some of the alterations, but part of that is probably because it does that thing. Can that stop being a thing where, like, they have several editions, so they put them all on the same disc, and then you put it in and you select what you want, and it'll, like, visibly, like, stutter when it's switched, so if you watch the original version, it doesn't stutter at all. But if you watch one of the other versions, there's going to be a little stutter every single time that it goes to one of those scenes. Just make more discs, seriously. I get that you can't have them separate in high quality on the same disc, but just make more discs, or just only release the longest and biggest version. That's fine with me, but don't. It really irritates me, and I realize nobody forced me to. I'm not going to be one of those people who are like, oh, I have to watch them. No, I do not. I don't have to watch any of these movies. I do so because I want to do these videos. Nobody's putting a gun to my head anymore. Yeah, I guess I kind of miss, Stockholm Syndrome or whatever. Yes. I find it, I wish that they would do it like that. Anyway, yes, I chose to watch, nobody made me, I chose to watch the longest version that the you know that I was able to find. You know, I want to. I realize a bunch of people aren't going to have watched it, but that's not really. You know, you can look some of these things up, and I want to try to talk about the version with the most content, and that is the closest to what the director wanted to put out there. You know, so yeah. Anyway, this version is an hour and 57 minutes, 57 and a half minutes without, sorry, with end credits, and somehow it's an hour and 50 minutes without. So it's literally 7 minutes and about 40 seconds of nothing but end credits. Yeah, anyway. Now, the theatrical is an hour, 51 minutes, and 46 seconds with end credits. So, yeah, you know, it's not a huge amount of, yeah, it's not a huge amount of extra content, but I do think that it is, some of the extra content is quite, you know, it makes it a better movie. I know I'm not talking about Moonblood Boots nudity. Yeah, some of the stuff, and I'm gonna be talking about some of the stuff because I'm pretty sure I remember. I do not remember seeing several of these things, you know, 10 years ago, and see that's the thing. I mean, I've watched much worse movies. I've watched movies far more recently that I don't remember much at all of at all. You know, the movie doesn't get me emotionally involved, but I do basically remember it. You know, but let's see, yeah. So some of the stuff, you know, if you like the movie, I would recommend watching the director's cut. I think there's a good chance you're gonna like it better than the theatrical cut. And if you hate the movie, but you still want to see the extra content, you know, I mean, I'm not gonna tell anyone to go out and spend money on a movie they don't want to watch, but you know, if a friend has it, you know, you can borrow it and watch. Yeah. Now I'm on record as, you know, I don't necessarily think a Terminator movie should be more than basically an hour and 40 minutes, which is what movies 1 and 3, you know, they're at that, and yeah, I just think it's a Terminator movie. It should keep going and not really slow down and not be so long that it. But yeah, let's see. And I'm not saying that the third movie is a better movie than the second movie, not by a long shot. And I think that's as much as I'm gonna try not to talk about the second one in this video because there's not really that much to compare and you know, and I'm not gonna be doing that thing where like I note every single time there's like, oh, but that's a reference to the first two movies, you know. If that's the kind of thing you want, you're not gonna find it in this video. I'm sure there are people who've made videos or like blogs or whatever where they list all the references. That's not what I'm interested in doing with these videos. Now, that takes us to notes taken while watching. 8 minutes and 40 seconds of just intro. Okay. I definitely do think there's at least one interesting character in this movie. I think I remember his name. It's Marcus, right? Now, the opening has all those flickering effects. I know it's supposed to look like that, but I do have to wonder if people who watched it for the first time on DVD or Blu-ray or whatever thought there was something wrong with the disc or something. It's always risky to put stuff like that in a movie. You know, that is still, it's something I absolutely love that was done in Batman Arkham Asylum. But I will say it works better if you have that for one of the consoles. It doesn't work quite as well on PC, but it's still nice. I quite, yes. Very nice, epic reveal of the title of the movie. Somewhat reminiscent of the first movie, and it is like a, you know, that was what they were gonna do in the 80s. And yeah, with, you know, it's very 2009 the way the title reveal comes in this one. But yeah, and I had almost forgotten they played a little bit of the iconic Terminator theme right after the epic title reveal. I guess it's possible that's a director's cut thing. How are you? Asking an hour. I think she's gonna need a Ouija board, but okay. So he forcibly kissed her. It's gonna be hard to redeem him after that. Do you have any last words? I'd like to ask if it's standard procedure to pose me in the Jesus-like position. I mean, given that the cross was used for execution, I guess it's somewhat fitting, but still. And the text informs us that the person who decided to blind us with white light is Michi. And we get a brief text intro that brings people up to speed on the franchise up to this point and explains how this is somewhat different from the way the war has been described in the first three, i.e. that John is not seen as the savior by everyone. Some call him a false prophet, which is, again, really on the nose choice of what, like, okay, we get it. Jesus. We get it. The movie, they kind of want to, you know, it's like you're watching the movie and like the audience member next to you who you don't actually know at all, complete stranger, is like, you know, elbowing you in like, it's like Jesus. Do you get it? It's Jesus. It's wrong. It's Jesus. It's really on the nose. Is on false prophet really, like, they're not actually like a religious cult, so it's not, or any religion. I'm not saying that it would only be a cult, but they're not like like super religious in the movie. So why would anyone call him a false prophet? I mean, just, you know, if you're not religious, I think just the term is he's mistaken. It doesn't have to be like a, yeah. I hate being nitpicky. No, I don't. But the Terminator 3 small hunter killer that came up out of the water presumably could have done a lot more damage if it just attacked before rising up out of the water. Like, they walked right over it. And then, like, afterwards it comes up, and I get it's supposed to be the thing, oh, it has to, like, it's a Gatling gun, it has to, like, start spinning fast enough, you know. I know that because I've played Yuri's Revenge, and I think they're also like that in Command and Conquer Generals and General Zero Hour. Man, I miss playing those. Anyway, I have wrist issues. That's literally the only reason that I'm not playing them anymore. Right. So, yeah, I get it. It wouldn't have time to attack the way that, and I don't know for sure, but I could totally imagine that, like, a, yeah, what's it called? Gatling gun can't operate underwater. But I mean, was it? Oh, I guess maybe it wasn't supposed to be underwater. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Anyway, still, my objection was, you know, why don't they have those hydrobots there? You know, the, like, they only realized it was there after they walked over it, past it. If there had been hydrobots, yeah, actually, yeah. Why didn't they have hydrobots in the base near, you know, like, just in case the, yeah, because it was the like, it was still somewhat operational, right? Like, there were, you know, in this extended cut, there's like people in cells. Were they just abandoned there when the water? Anyway, let's see. But yeah, you know, I'm almost certain that this first part of the movie is not actually a trap. You know, the climax is a trap, and the whole signal thing is a trap. But I don't think the Terminator is meant for the humans to get into this facility. And yeah, I'm pretty sure this is just the extended cut, and I, you know, might be an R-rated. Yeah, I think they cut this so that it wouldn't get an R-rating. There are like dead human bodies on like tables, just like left out, and like you get the sense that they've been, you know, cutting people open and like trying to figure out, you know, and this is the facility where they have Marcus, so yeah, at least some people have been cut open here. You know, they put his, you know, his flesh and his brain in like this cyborg body, which is actually, you know, if you want to be super nitpicky, this is technically the first time one of the movies has an actual cyborg in it, because cyborg requires for the flesh to be like, I don't remember the exact explanation, but if it's grown for the robot, that doesn't make it a cyborg. That makes it a robot with flesh that was grown for it. Like if there's a nervous system, maybe a brain hooked up, but otherwise robot, that's a cyborg. You know, as far as I remember. Anyway, but yeah, you know, dead human bodies, and they have like people, you know, living people in cages, genuinely unsettling, and I guess the word is gross, but it's not like excessive. You know, it's effective. It's okay. This is a way better movie, but you know, the thing I wouldn't say is like excessive. It goes really far, but I don't think that that's a mistake. I think that that works really well for the movie, and I think it works well in this movie. That was actually, yeah, honestly, the director's cut stuff, again, other than Moonblood, Good Nudity, the yeah, it tended to be the stuff that I was more involved by. So yeah, they should have not cut it down to a PG-13 from an R rating. And again, I mean, I'm sorry, but 7.5 minutes more. Sorry, wait, 3 minutes. 3 minutes more of movie. You can't possibly tell me that, you know, oh, you know, we just gotta cut for time. No, 3 minutes. No way. It's possible that originally there was other stuff, and these 3 minutes went with that. But there's no way that they had a movie that was like, and they're like, we gotta cut at least 3 minutes out of this thing, otherwise people are not gonna stay for the entire, you know. Anyway, I'm thinking they removed it so that they could get a PG-13 rating, and yeah, I definitely do think, excuse me, that at least some of these things were very interesting. And yeah, I mean, honestly, I maybe it would be good if it, actually it's possible. This you know, the version I bought is not the only version that's been released. I'm sure that there's at least one version where it's just, you know, okay, these are deleted scenes, you know, just the, because it's 3 minutes. You know, if you hate the movie, you're not gonna want to watch the entire. I don't hate the movie. You know, I didn't hate it in 2009. I don't hate it in 2019. Yeah, just you know, I will say, having rewatched the show and knowing that this was like, you know, the studio was like, I don't know about the show, let's make another movie, and that this was what they put out, and then they, you know, they didn't even make another movie for another 6 years, but no more of the show. That frustrates me, but I don't hate this movie. You know, this movie was not like some, you know, some hateful, bitter, you know, people putting together this just to ruin the show or something. No. The people who, you know, who make these kinds of decisions made that decision, and then a bunch of people who were passionate, they made this movie. I mean, I'm sorry. Ultimately, I don't think that it's, you know, it didn't pay off beyond the technical aspect, but I would definitely say, and it's not just because I've been watching, you know, the behind the scenes stuff and such. This was made by people who were passionate about what they were doing. I do think that is clear. It's just mildly misguided, you know. But anyway, yeah. If you hate this movie, you're not gonna want to sit through nearly 2 hours, you know, an hour and 50 minutes for 3 minutes of extra material, obviously. And I'm pretty sure, let me just briefly check to make absolutely certain. I'm almost certain, no, they're not. You can't watch just the deleted scenes, not all of this, for the director's cut Blu-ray disc. But, you know, I mean, home releases of movies are made for people who love the movie. It's not for people who just want to, But I don't know. I guess it's possible that it's, maybe online somewhere since it's 3 minutes, But I'm pretty sure, for example, I found the deleted scenes off American Psycho online. So anyway, yeah, I do think that it makes for a better movie now. And yes, in this kind of facility, we learn about the T-800. And yes, I realized that the humans on top of the base are, they die between when they go, you know, when they land and when John gets back up there. Pretty sure it's still not supposed to be a trap. It's just that Skynet like found out they were there or something. But yeah, excuse me. And so yeah, one of the problems in this first short, well, not first scene. First scene was Marcus, but the execution. In this first part of the future war, first John lands and we see there's like a bunch of other people there, and they tell John to go into the base. And then some other people join him down there, and then he's told to go back up. And so he goes back up, and all the people that landed, all the people that stayed up there are now dead. And it's, I don't know, 5 or 6 people, maybe more, possibly less, but there were people up there. And then he leaves, and then the base. Wait, does the base explode before? Was he leaving and leaving them behind? Whatever. I don't remember the exact sequence of events. What I'm saying is, the movie makes it clear that the people down there also died. And I don't think that it's because it's off-screen death, but it doesn't get to the audience. It didn't get to me when I watched it in theaters, and I know several other people who felt the same way, and it didn't get to me today. So, yeah, a pretty good idea that was coming. Just making sure that the people texting me, it's not like, the Titanic is sinking. That's way too obscure a reference. But then I earlier made it's another obscure reference, so it's kind of my thing. Yeah. So it didn't get to me, and maybe there are people out there who felt it, but it's one of those things where it's like, war is it's so destructive, and so many people die during it, and war movies are supposed to make you feel that, and a lot of them do, and this one doesn't, and it really is too bad. I mean, you see. Wait, let me rephrase that. I was about to say that you don't see that many people die in the first movie, but again, a lot of the deaths in the future war scenes is off screen, like this. You know what? Maybe part of why it works better is that you can at least hear them. You saw them, and each were given like this little moment, like you have little children huddled together, like they're cold. You've got this person trying desperately to eat this nasty goop because they know that they have to, or they have to stay well, but it's so nasty they can barely get down. You see this one kid like killing a rat and being like, yes, breakfast, so you feel for them, you empathize with these people, even though they've hardly had any screen time. And then once the Terminator busts into the bunker and starts killing them all, yeah, you don't see very many people like it, but you hear people, you hear their death, and the implication is strong enough. I mean, logically, of course they didn't. If they didn't film it, then why would they have them acted out? Of course not. No, they added sound effects. You don't actually see very many people die or even particularly run, I don't think, in that scene, but the implication is so strong. And I mean, here you should feel it, but it just, I'm sorry, McG, I've never seen a movie of his actually get an emotional response. Not from me, not from other people. You know, I've watched this movie, both of his Charlie's Angels movies. No, I don't know why either. What has he done much of anything else? I'm not sure. Yeah, I guess that might be it. But is that more or less what he's made, or at least I don't know. Maybe he's made stuff after this movie that I don't know about. Anyway, oh right, sorry. This Means War, I think it was called. I only watched the Film Brain review of that, and boy did it look bad for so many reasons. But anyway, yeah, I'm not gonna excuse me. I'm not gonna tell anyone what they can and can't watch, but that movie, if you're interested in that movie, maybe start watching at least some of Film Brain's review. You know, if you watch the entire thing, it's going to spoil the whole movie. But if you just watch like the first 5 minutes of it, you can maybe get an idea of whether you want to watch the movie or whether you just want to watch the rest of his review and be like, you know what, my life is definitely too short to waste on. Yeah, I forget if he's made other movies other than these four, but you know, yeah, that was, you know, Film Brain said of that movie as well that it didn't really, you don't really connect with the, to be fair, part of that might be the characterization of the people in that movie, but anyway. And the base blows up and we see a nuclear blast afterwards, which is the first time of, yeah, maybe only two, where this movie will show a nuclear blast that doesn't affect the characters that, you know, like, I realize that John Connor has like plot shield, you know, plot armor, but the it's still pretty ridiculous. It's more than pretty. It's grotesquely ridiculous. And yes, I do acknowledge, if this is just, you know, if each of these movies says that, you know, that Skynet used nukes all over the world. Yes, it is absolutely ridiculous that people are just, you know, the nuclear fallout would pretty much, yeah. I'm not gonna try to argue against that, and I acknowledge that that's ridiculous in the other movies as well. But a nuclear blast quite that close, like if you can see it with your eyes, there's some chance you're too close. Now, but yeah, in this version, given that there were people who were not soldiers in the base when it blew up, you know, yeah, I do care more, but I do understand that might have been cut so they got a PG-13, not an R. Although, wait, he said, yeah, there's like a prisoner transport flying away, and he says that it was headed away. Maybe all the people in cages were taken away. I'm not entirely sure. It's not, it's still kind of a, although I guess maybe those are the people being released at the very end, then what I'm getting at is I do care more in this version. And see, that's another thing. At the end of the day, when the ending scene, when John is freeing all these people and he keeps looking for Kyle, this is supposed to be like emotion. Like in the first movie, when all the cops are getting gunned down, and then you know you see a shadow right outside the door, and a hand breaks through the window and starts opening the door, and you think that's the Terminator, and it's gonna find Sarah and it's gonna kill her, and then you realize it's Kyle, and he goes Sarah, and she goes Kyle, and they get out of there. You know, Kyle gets, you know, takes a bullet, but they do get out of there alive. That's a huge relief for the audience. And this is supposed to be the same thing. You know, dozens of people are getting out alive, and it just doesn't really get to you, you know. And this is again like I am not that difficult to get like emotionally engaged in a story. Like there are movies that other people are like, what are you talking? Like maybe I shouldn't give examples just to. I've probably already dug myself a deep enough hole in this one. But there are movies that other people are like, why? How? That's not. You know, you can't. You know, how can you care about that? It's so badly done. And but I do care, and with McGee, it just doesn't. And ultimately, for his Charlie's Angels movies, is I don't know, other than people who love that franchise and who wishes that, I've never watched the original show, so I don't know. But maybe it was a masterpiece, and maybe there are people out there who are like, McGee's movies were terrible, and maybe the new one's it's gonna be better. But it's it wasn't like a huge crime against humanity. I'm not saying that this is either, but yeah, when he made those two movies, I was like, well, I mean, the movies, with or without his direction, the movies are fluff. There's not really any like depth to them. Essentially by design, they're just made to be fun. And I do think that when you watch them, it comes across that these people had fun making these movies. I mean, but with this, it's a war movie. It's a Terminator movie. It has these. It has depth. It does. It's just that the depth doesn't affect you. If someone explained the movie to you, it might get to you. But watching it, it's just like, well, I mean, that's this really should affect me, but it's not. And it's just and yeah, was this maybe where people were like, okay, wow, we really McGee is just not going to deliver, plain and simple. You know, I I really do not like Michael Bay, but clearly his audience do really enjoy his movies. And Terminator fans, some of them did, but a lot of people did not like McGee's take on the Terminator franchise. I mean, the 6 years passed between this and Genesis, and it's not that like 7 years passed between the first and second movie, but they were making Arnold Schwarzenegger and James Cameron were making other movies in between. It's not that just they just yeah. Anyway, and yeah, I think pretty quickly the idea of direct sequels to this, or even movies that respected the canon, and I'm not saying you should, of the third and this movie, that went out the window pretty quickly when this movie hit theaters because people did not like it, and just that think about how much that takes to change canon, like let as a quick example. I guess I don't want to spoil anything. If you've watched the Friday the 13th movies, the Nightmare on Elm Street series, and the Halloween movies, or just at least one of those series, think about how many movies they went before they started saying, okay, those movies don't count. That actually, yeah, it it took a while. The movie studios are not that eager to tell audiences that movie you watched, it doesn't matter anymore. That movie we put out that you paid money to go see doesn't matter anymore. Now, Marcus wakes up covered in mud. It's pouring down rain. He's naked. He screams. Must have hit the bar pretty hard last night. So I guess Marcus was supposed to come out of the base after the humans went into it, But wouldn't it have made more sense if he was like locked in a cage, so they freed him? You know, that way he comes out of it. You know, now it's just extremely suspicious to the Resistance as well as the audience. Like, Blair even says it, and she doesn't hear it when she says it, but she says, "You sent me out after survivors from that." You know, he was, excuse me, he was the only one left alive. Excuse me. That's super sketchy. That's like imagine if the place had been full. You know, sorry, in the extended cut, it is full of prisoners. Imagine if he was like 1 out of 12 prisoners, and they took him back to base. You know, that would have been like, you know, what are we gonna assume that every single one of these guys is evil, and you know, at this point they haven't seen a Terminator that looks fully human. You know, that is convincing as human. So yeah. Now, this is crazy. I just met you. So in this version, Ashton actually pulls a gun on Connor and says, I don't really believe in the future stuff, because I could change the future just like that." You know, points right to the, and then it cuts, and we do clearly see what CinemaSins calls the surprise committee. So really, they were originally very well established. It's just that the scene was cut down, and they only really had that, like, you couldn't have an establishing shot that didn't show the gun. And if you see the gun in his hand, but you don't see him point it at Connor's head, you're like, why is he holding a gun? And if you do see him holding a gun to his head, you're probably going to be thinking what I can almost hear the producers, that, like, the producers telling them to cut it out. You can't do that. You can't have one of the good guys point a gun to John Connor's head. And this is like the first 15-20 minutes of movie. You can't do that. That's not. It's the audience is not. You can't do that. You gotta cut that out. And ultimately, I do think that it does. It makes. I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe it doesn't necessarily make it a better movie, but it does really illustrate Ashton does not believe that he either he doesn't believe or he doesn't respect the idea that John Connor is critical to winning the war. And it gets that across very, very distinctly, so I don't know, maybe it's better to cut it, but I do see where they're going, and there's like, there's a quote from McGee where he's like, when after the nukes hit and then everybody, climbs back out of the holes, and there's one guy comes up and says, I'm going to help you win the war. They're not going to be like, oh, please teach me. They're going to be like, screw you. There was more to that line, but I don't remember exactly. But yeah, just they're not going to just automatically believe him, and the scene illustrates that. Now, and I'm also not going to be referencing the Simpsons video all that much in this. Barnes, your brother Noble didn't make it. See, again, I wouldn't be cracking jokes like that if this was a truly effective war movie, Yeah, and maybe it's only in this extended version, but they did change some of the lines in Sarah's tape to John, so it's not completely pointless that they re-recorded it, which I don't know. Maybe the what was I? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe maybe it was always like that. Maybe it wasn't. But in the extended version, in addition to what she said in the first movie, she also says, when you meet Kyle, he is going to be a teenager. Which, you know, I mean, it's not necessary that the audience hears that, but when you hear that on the tape, you do get why, you know, and then, like, she says, she says the thing with, you know, God, a person could go crazy thinking about these things after she says he'll be a teenager. So they did have to change the tape at least somewhat. You could make an argument that they could have gotten closer to the way it originally was, you know, tape 7 versus tape 28 and other details, but there was a reason, at least when they included that line. You know, the for people who haven't watched, yeah, this movie doesn't actually. Do they even mention the time travel? I'm not sure they mention the time travel. The yeah, I'm not sure they just directly say. I think they just say if Kyle Reese dies, there's no John Connor. But yeah, I don't think the opening text said, for example, and yeah, it really is like. Oh, sorry. Obviously, they mentioned the time. Well, no, yeah, they say that he's his father. I don't remember if they. And the tape. The tape has the line, "Will it affect your decision to send him back?" So yeah. Now if you haven't watched the other movies, you can surmise basically but yeah, the fact that the yeah, you know, Kyle Reese is currently a teenager, but he will father John Connor. That's a good thing to establish very early in the movie, because if you haven't watched the other movies, you're gonna be like, how is this kid possibly John Connor's father? You know, if you don't know about the time travel, so yeah, and yeah, I think some people would have been confused by him being a teenager in this movie, and also being John's father, if not for a line like that. And again, I don't remember. Maybe they cut it from the PG-13, but yeah, the but yeah, you know, this is set in 2018 when the events that, you know, that we see flashbacks to and that Kyle talks about are 2029. So yeah, he arrived from the year 2029, among other things. And I forget if this is only the extended version, but in the scene, John and Kate actually talk strategy. You know, she points out they should test the signal on a Hydrobot, something they know. You know, in her words, yeah, something that we know, a Hydrobot. You know, so her appearance in this movie is not completely pointless. You know, the way I remembered it was that she was there and she said a thing or two, but really the reason, like, she's there so that she can, so that it's a major character who reacts when they first see that Marcus is not human. And so for the ridiculous heart transplant at the end, which I'm not going to talk too much about that. Other people have already pointed out how ridiculous that is. I no longer make videos where I mention every single thing with it. There we go. I try to keep it to original stuff I have, or if I bring up what somebody else has said, it's something I have to comment on. I don't have anything to add to what other people have said about the ridiculousness of the heart surgery. It just, yeah. As much as I hate the stupid Home Alone traps in this movie, I can accept Star, the mute black girl, activating one of them with a knife. You know, she's cutting through something. You know what? No, I can't. Because that thing was holding up that massive amount of metal, and yet she could cut through it. I mean, what she had wasn't that, like, it wasn't this, like, crazy knife. It was just a regular little, never mind, I take it back. That doesn't make, anyway, what I'm getting to is, her running around with a shotgun in her hand looks absolutely ridiculous. Even if she doesn't actually fire it, which would obviously be completely ludicrous. You know, just, like, but her, no, I get it. It's because I think McGee is the one who said it on, like, a maybe director's commentary or something. But yeah, he's like, Star always she's very intuitive. She always brings the right tool for the job, and in this case, it's a shotgun because Kyle needs to point a gun at Marcus, but it still looks absolutely ridiculous in her hands. I had forgotten about them like rushing to hide when the hunter killer flies by. That does seem like something that belongs in the first movie in the future scenes, so that's something they got right at least. One of the really big problems is that people are with ease defeating machines that the Home Alone traps. I'm sorry, they're ridiculous. I don't I don't know who thought for a second that people who enjoyed the Terminator movies wanted to see them taken out with ease with Home Alone traps. I just I'm not saying that like Kyle should have like a ton of weapons and ammo in his given his situation. I'm just saying why not the problem is they were like, oh, we gotta have Terminators, fighting in this movie. But he wouldn't have a lot of guns and ammo. Oh, Home Alone style traps. It just it should have just been them hiding. And I know people are gonna say that would be boring. And maybe that's why you shouldn't make like at least not scenes like this, in for a future war. Yeah, I've always said you should make an entire movie set during the future war. But anyway, John is basically being told if they turn off the signal, the Hydrobot will come back online. Why doesn't he back away? It nearly grabbed his face with these sharp things. Just it's another one of those. That's one of the things I hate about this movie and so many other movies. Again, I don't hate the movie overall, but I hate a lot of things about it. If that makes any sense, it's competently made, but then you have these stupid decisions like, why is he so close to it? It's just frustrating to watch for the audience because this is John Connor. He's supposed to be smart. Why is he doing something so stupid other than so that you have the visual of it really close to his face? And it's like the woman was basically telling him, I'm going to turn it back off now. And it's also like, if she's turning it off and he doesn't know, then she's nearly killing, she's risking killing John Connor. I mean, I guess there's some chance that she doesn't believe that he's really important, but does nobody else in the room object to? No, it just you can't make it make sense. And it's actually if like what I could have respected if they were like if we turn it back off, it's gonna come back, so we're not gonna turn it off. And then suddenly like it like the thing they were running the signal through, like I don't know, like a fuse blows or something, and like it makes the popping noise, and then it comes back to life and almost grabs his face. I could respect that, but given that it's decisions made by the characters, it just makes them look stupid. Man, let's see. I mean, it's something that you see in like Paul W. S. Anderson movies, and you really don't want to imitate Paul W. S. Anderson. We'll go tomorrow morning. We will all go together when we go. It's really stupid, the idea that the reason that Kyle uses the strap in the first movie was so that no one could grab the gun from him. Obviously, in the first movie, it was so that he could hide it under the coat without having to hold onto it with his hand, which would make it extremely obvious that he was hiding something under there. When you see someone day to day walking down the street in a long coat, you don't think he must be hiding a shotgun under there, unless he's like holding, yeah. It's so stupid. It's the stupid prequel thing of like we have to explain everything, even things that obviously didn't need explaining, and the explanations just make things worse, not better. We're the resistance. Resisting what? I mean, you can't possibly be talking about those killer robots that I saw at least 2 different kinds of earlier. You are not alone. They know that. They got that transmission from Zod 5 years ago. Marcus fixes Kyle's radio, and Star smiles. It's kind of sweet. And Kyle smiles, which usually only happens when Sarah does the think fast thing. I do love that about the first movie, that Kyle basically never smiles other than that. And I'm not saying that I'm expecting Kyle in this to never smile. He's not that hardened yet. Skynet is planning something big. The Resistance is planning something bigger. And our button actually works. John Connor, I gotta find this guy. That's what you said about Howard Stern. And Marcus gets hurt, I think, like fixing the engine. And Star, puts a Band-Aid on his arm. I don't hate her character. I really, it's kind of obvious and like, oh, this poor mute girl in this war. But no, some of her character moments are actually kind of sweet. See, I told you, I can get emotionally involved. It's just not. And yeah, and there at the end when she, I don't think you see her get the detonator there at the end. But you see that she's looking at it, and she starts like heading towards it. And then there at the very end, she hands it to John. So in between those two scenes, she did get it, and she kept it on her because she knew it was going to be important. And she hands it to him, and he, again, it's stupid that he detonates it because then you have the nuke, which doesn't affect them at all. But I do kind of like that right up to the end, she really, she's, some of the time it's stupid, but in a couple of these cases, I do like that she just, she finds the exact right thing to use in the situation. You're leaving. You're gonna leave us. Which happens. Dads leave. If the idea is to stay alive, I'm driving. Pushes him out. Marcus is on a real kick of insisting the other two get out of the car. You point a gun at somebody, you better be ready to pull the trigger. Shut up, kid. I never thought I'd be saying that to Kyle Reese. Never in a million years before this movie. Skynet programmed that large Transformers robot to move like a ninja or the T-Rex. It's ridiculous how silent it is. And then the moment that they notice it, it's like super loud, That can sometimes work in a movie the first time you see it. But yeah, honestly, even the first time I watched this movie, I was like, how could they possibly not hear that before? And honestly, I could somewhat accept if you design the robot right, then it can be huge and still, maybe it also helps if it doesn't move too fast, but it can be huge and still move very silently, but you can't have it be that huge and make that much noise, move that fast, and then yet still sneak up on them like that. And they find Star face down, and you wonder if she's been hurt, and some of the people from the gas station leave in cars, and one of them runs another one over and doesn't even slow down afterwards. So this really is a very ruthless world, and like I guess I shouldn't say what it reminds me of because that's kind of a spoiler. I just wonder if the guy who's run over. No, that's a spoiler. Never mind. as much as I love that movie and love that bit of that movie, I do really respect that this movie shows. I mean, this is really the first time we've seen humans who are not part of the resistance in future war scenes. And I mean, yeah, not every single one of them is going to be, yeah, some of them are going to be hiding out in, for example, a 7-Eleven. And just, yeah, they have this underground, yeah, they have this little, I don't know, little big, this underground area where they have food and fuel, and they hide out down there. And sometimes when they're not hiding out, a robot comes by and grabs the prisoners, grabs them and takes them prisoner. Or I guess maybe that only happens when Kyle Reese is when someone on the kill list is identified by them. Anyway, let's see. And really the fact that the kill list that the resistance could intercept that from Skynet. I mean, that's part of the trap, isn't it? So that John knows for sure that Kyle is out there and Skynet is after him, and that will make him more determined about the prison rescue. Now, yeah, and here I know, Star. I'm sorry, she's too intuitive. It's just they push it too far. I think, is this when they get the? Let's see. Yeah, I don't remember exactly which one of them is it. But yeah. I know people who say that the large robot doesn't resemble a transformer that much. Even if you don't think it looks like a transformer, they use the same sound that the transformer. I haven't even watched the Transformers movies. I've only seen clips and trailers of those movies, but I know what the Transformers sound like. And the big robot in this movie sounds like a Transformer. Clearly they were trying to appeal to that. I don't know if the second movie had come out when this movie came out. I'm pretty sure the second Transformers movie was 2009, so the same year. So yeah, they were like, our movie has a Transformer too. Let's see. And yeah, here I noted so far the action is decently exciting, which really I'd say for the whole movie. Although I do think it's kind of a case of diminishing returns, because early on you feel like maybe at some point I will get emotionally invested in this movie, and the further you get into the movie, the more you realize that's never going to happen. So eventually it just becomes just, yeah, you know, I don't want to say white noise because it's not that far, but it doesn't have that much of an effect. Let's see. But yeah, it's decently exciting, but man, is it loud compared to the soundtrack for the rest of the movie. And I know it's not, a lot of movies have that, but it really is like, you'll have like huge explosions, and then like you'll have characters like, I'm not gonna, yeah, I'm just gonna say, because I really, with the fans running the audio. But yeah, you'll have characters whispering very quietly, even though they're saying hugely important stuff. And it's like, not everybody. Look, I watch movies with subtitles, in part for this very reason. And I'm fortunate enough to live in a country that puts subtitles on movies in movie theaters, or at least for American movies and other foreign languages. But a lot of people watch movies that don't have them. So, 1 second you're like blasted back in your seat, like, you know, from the explosion noise, and then the next you're like, what is he saying? Just, I really, I can we just cancel that, please? I really hate that. I get they wanted to have action where people are constantly, where people aren't constantly firing at. Yeah, I voice type these notes, and I, for various reasons, don't proofread. Yeah, they didn't want to just have them constantly be firing guns. But a lot of the action just feels like these small Rube Goldberg machine stuff, which is just not the kind of thing you expect in a movie about the robot apocalypse. You know, I like action like that in other movies, but just no, I'm sorry. Look, I get it. You didn't want everybody running around with a plasma cannon, and you know, whatever. I respect your vision, but I mean, throwing tire irons and like the that bit where they attack the giant robot with like, you know, they got the gasoline line and they've got, you know, and they shoot several times and then do they drop a flare in it to light it? Maybe it's just look. This is not what I don't think. Yeah, this is not what fans want from Terminator. It's just not. You know, I would have been much more okay with a movie that had a lot of sneaking and just, you know, yeah, ultimately very little action if you just don't want the plasma rifles and the various, you know. Now I mean, I do actually when like when John is partially in the water and he's firing the assault rifle at the Hydrobots, and you know, and there's this one part where he's using the gun from a helicopter, you know, the machine gun mounted onto a helicopter. I think that works. You know, I ultimately don't have a huge problem with the action in the movie that does use guns because it looks like okay, you know, I, I can somewhat buy. At the end of all of this, some robots were destroyed, even if you know it's. I don't like that you can now take them out with just bullets, but apparently, like the idea is, well, they're not, you know, it's not the T-800 yet, and the models before the T-800 could be taken out with bullets. But anyway, I like how the huge Terminator just picks up Marcus when he's trying to use the axe to get into the prison transport. It looks like an annoyed parent, like preventing a child from picking it is, like you know, if a child like falls and has like a cut on his hand, just can't stop picking, you know, and the parent's like, stop doing that, you know, you can't do that. It just, yeah, and Marcus gets skipped across the water like a rock. It looks hilarious. Let's go again. Let's go again. So I guess Blair was just so certain that he'd be able to catch her since she would definitely have gotten hurt if he hadn't caught her. And she was, you know, she was just cutting through the strap. She couldn't possibly have thought that she'd still be hanging there, or why would she be cutting the strap? And see, I'm not gonna go through every single one of the movie, but I'm just saying there are a lot of these, and it's just, and you know, he catches her, and then she's like, "You can let me go now." Yeah, but he couldn't before, you moron, you dingus. There, focus on trophy. It eases the pain. Let's see. Listen, if you've got a problem with the machines, he's definitely the guy you want to talk to. I did not know John Connor moonlighted as an IT guy. It's a decent fight between Marcus and the guys who are gonna assault Blair, but as usual for the action in this movie, it's so eager to reference the first two movies. And no, again, I'm not gonna go over the I'm sure other people will do that. You have a strong heart. It could power an entire city. I'm not a good guy. You are. You're too damn dumb to know it. See, as long as I'm thinking of other things, of better movies, I can get through this. Honestly, some decent tension when they wait for the signal to take down the hunter killer as it approaches. Like, you know, if they don't, if the signal doesn't take that thing down, like, there may be 2 seconds away from being attacked by the hunter-killer, and they'd be dead. They have nothing shielding them from the... So, yeah, that was... Yeah. And yes, I do know that, obviously, it just fakes the signal working. I get that the T-600 does manage to stop the prisoner who tried to climb out, but it seems, excuse me, it seems like it would have been a lot easier to just put barbed wire up there. You know, either actual barbed wire or just copies of that movie, because no one wants to touch that. Like, if literally everyone, you know, at the same time tried to climb out in different places, maybe someone would be able to get up close to the T-600, and I don't know, I guess, like, if, well, yeah, I mean, Kyle takes out at least one with like a what's it called? Crap, what's it called? It's a screwdriver. If one of them had a screwdriver, climbed up and jammed it in there, you know, it's just stupid. Why so stupid? This is not, you know, it's not like this is part of the trap. Let's see. Marcus goes through the minefield, which does not go well for him. I appreciate the detail that Kate talks about Marcus as if he isn't there. Like she's talking about a machine or, you know, maybe an injured pet or something, but certainly not something that understands what they're saying. You know, John talks directly to Marcus. He listens to Kate, and then he turns to Marcus and addresses him directly. But Kate, she doesn't say, you are a, she says, it's this and that, you know. I appreciate that detail. And also, like, it's too bad it's in the trailer, because it genuinely is decent. Like, she, you know, she's like, okay, you know, she's like, okay, I'm, you know, big, I have to save this guy, you know, you know, and she rips open the shirt, and then she's like, oh no, you know, just, she genuinely, you know, and I mean, she can act, you know, but that's not news. That wasn't news in 2009, I don't think. Yeah, uh, Bryce Dallas Howard can act, you know. So there's, yeah, there's those I do appreciate, the shock at realizing that it's a machine. A machine got into the base. You know, this is not supposed to be able to happen. And she's finally like, you know, there are certain things about him are completely unlike any machine we've seen before. You know, this is something they have to deal with. But she's not talking to him. She's talking about him like he isn't even there. Because she doesn't think of him as a human being that needs saving anymore. She thinks of him as one of them, you know. Which is also, again, part of why it's effective is, you know, possibly the audience does at this point, certainly Blair does, as we see not long after at this point, and John Connor, by the end of the movie, do think of Marcus as a human being. You know, he's a human being who happens to have, you know, he didn't choose to become a machine. They forcibly turned him into a machine. And even so, as long as he has his own, you know, his own mind, his own willpower, he's not going to help the machines. I know you. I heard your voice on the radio. I was sent to stop telling you. I was sent to tell. Stop doing that freaking Batman voice. Nobody likes it. When John says, "If I let you down, you'll kill everyone in this room," why does Marcus respond, "Only you"? I don't think that's the time for sass. I really don't think it's a good idea to tell him. I mean, I think the idea is he's joking. You know, he has kind of a harsh sense of humor. Like when Kyle asks about the jacket, he says the other guy didn't need it. You know, so he's not saying he'll actually kill John, but why would he even joke about it? If I let you down, you'll kill everyone in this room, which is what was supposed to happen in the very last scene between Marcus and Connor. So I don't know. I guess they filmed that and edited it into the movie, even though they ended up not having him, kill everyone. I do think that would have been like a good bit of foreshadowing, because the audience would be like, no, he's not. He's a good guy. And then if it had happened at the end, we would have been taken by surprise, big time. Kate is characterized completely differently from what she's like in the third movie, which I rewatched just yesterday for comparison. The writing and the acting is incredibly different. I guess what I'm trying to say is thank you. Thank you for changing her character into something likable. And I suppose a person can change a lot over, 14, 15 years or so between these two movies. But she is nothing like she was in the third movie, which, yeah. I meant to note, but I forgot to, so I'm going to say it here. One of the problems with this movie is that ultimately Kyle doesn't really need to be in this movie. He's in the movie because John needs someone to save, and Marcus needs someone that needs saving so that he can prove that he's human, or that he's not, on the machine side. But it didn't need to be Kyle at all, and that's, this movie. There are in the first. Yeah, I'm not going to count Kate because she's really irritating in the third movie, and I hate saying that about a female character. And the reason I say it is because it's clearly like she's a female character designed by male writers who don't like women. It's just they think that all women are is like shrill and obnoxious and annoying and in the way, and I guess they have to be there. And so they write characters like that, and they direct performances like that. I don't know if Jonathan Mostow is one of those people, but at the end of the day, that is he is the director, And I've seen Claire Danes give much more appealing performance. I don't remember if I've seen her in other things than Terminator 3 and Romeo plus Juliet, but she's so appealing in that movie. You really understand why Romeo falls for her, at least as far as I remember. I haven't watched that movie in a lot of years, but I remember her being really appealing in that. So it's not the actress, it's the writing and, yeah, the direction. Even it's possible Jonathan Mostow doesn't think of women that way, but he did still get that performance out of her. I don't know, maybe producers were hounding him. So I'm not going to count it. In the first three movies, there are basically three human characters where it's like that is, that's it's a well-defined character. It's a really important character for the good guys to, yeah, the three hero characters. That's what I'm getting at. I'm not trying to, yeah, Kyle, Sarah, and John. And Kyle was originally supposed to be in the second movie very briefly, but that was cut. If you watched it theatrically, you didn't see Kyle Reese in the second, and he's not in the third. So this is, out of four movies, this is only the second one to have Kyle, and they don't use the character in any kind of interesting way, and that's one of the big problems with this movie. You didn't need for that to be Kyle at all. It could so easily have been just, they just needed some reason for John to, get into the yeah, I don't know, I guess maybe you're supposed to think, well, he's taking care of Star, so clearly he has a lot of empathy. But other than that, he's kind of like, he's there so that Marcus can prove that he's gradually becoming less of a jerk. over the course of the movie, he does start to treat Kyle better. But I mean, there's not really like a fundamental, like Marcus at the start of the movie, would he not have gone to the? Actually, let me. I'm gonna try not to cause dead air, but let me think. Let's see. What would be the thing that changes him? No, I mean, part of the reason he goes to the camp is that he realizes he's a machine. That had nothing to do with Kyle. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure I see it. I don't, Kyle is there so that Marcus can act as sort of a big brother to him. Here's how deal with this shotgun. Here, see, you can do this. If you use this strap, then. But that character didn't have to be Kyle, and yeah, and there's nothing. Kyle doesn't actually really do anything. I guess maybe you're supposed to think that, oh, yeah, yeah, like he says, the difference between us and the machines is that we bury our dead, but no one's going to bury you. To be fair, they tried, it didn't take. And to just, yeah, so yeah, okay, he helps wake Marcus's humanity, but that didn't need to be Kyle. And I mean, Kyle Reese, he's a very hardened character in the first movie. I know that happened between the events of this movie and that movie, but him having a lot of empathy really isn't that. That's not like this huge defining thing for Kyle. I yeah, I've taken some notes that I'm gonna get to, but the thing I want to say is it doesn't use the characters well. There's also like John. Is this really the John that like he's a loose cannon character? He's he wants to save people, although would he be? No, yeah, yeah. He wanted to save people even when he didn't know Kyle was going to be there. So yeah, yeah. So he has a lot of empathy for other people, and he is convinced that they can win the war even without the what's that line? We don't trade lives. So I guess yeah, the it's at the end of the day that didn't need to be John Connor. It doesn't like I guess the hacking, he hacks the Moto Terminator and he hacks his way into Skynet Central at the end. I guess that's supposed to be see, he's still John Connor. Yeah, I don't know. The let's see. I mean, I don't know. Is he very John Connor like in the third movie? I mean, ultimately, he's sometimes shouting about the machines. So he's taken that over for Sarah, who took that over for Kyle. And yeah, in this movie, I mean, not really. Yeah, I mean, everybody already knows that the machines are there. So when he shouts, he's not shouting about the danger of the machines. He's shouting that they need to save Kyle Reese. And that's maybe that's part of the problem. They did away with the time travel. They did away with the present day setting, and it's not a chase movie. It's a war movie. But they just felt they couldn't make a Terminator movie without having at least one character who has to be kept alive so that the future war will be won. And yeah, I guess that kind of ended up. I mean, honestly, would that character have been Kyle Reese, other than fan service and then the plot needing one character who was like, you know what? You know what would have been interesting? If Marcus, if, remove Kyle from the movie entirely, Marcus ends up back at Skynet Central And John realizes they're gonna realize that he's not following their orders, and they're gonna kill him. And he is human. I realize that now, so I'm going to save him. Then you do, of course, have the thing of, why is John risking his own life? Which, if he's risking his own life to save Kyle Reese, if Kyle dies, John dies. So anyway, but I mean, then, yeah, ultimately, it's just the the ending has, the Connors rushing to stop a Terminator from killing someone who has to live so that the future will happen the way it is. So after so much of the movie only referencing the other movies, not very, very determined to not be one of the other movies, it just, yeah, at the end it's just another of it uses the same basic idea for the ending. The ending of every Terminator movie is about keeping alive up to this point. The first four Terminator movies, even though it maybe kind of seemed like this one wasn't going there, by the end, it's like the first three. They're rushing to make sure that the Connors survive so that the future war will be won. And yeah, I think they should have either gone completely away from that sort of thing, or they should have, leaned into it more, because it's this sort of, I don't think anybody is satisfied by this. Again, I realize some people like the film, but I don't think it was the right way to go. Now, let's go back to the notes. And Barnes shoots Marcus in the chest as revenge for his brother. And then Blair shoots him in the chest as well to prove to Barnes that she isn't going to help Marcus. It's actually a decently effective scene. I forget if it's in the original cut or if it's only director's cut. If I had to guess, I don't think I've seen it before. And yeah, and then she tries to, help him flee the entire camp, which is ultimately, yeah, I mean, that entire action scene is pointless. It would have ended up the same way whether she had tried to save him. Like, let's hypothetically say that it's clear that she's going to try to save him, but then, like, they grab her before she can try to save him, and then John and Marcus have the conversation that they have. It didn't need to be after Marcus and Blair almost escape camp, but then John catches up to him, and then they have the conversation. It just, yeah. I will grant, most of the action in this movie is not rendered pointless. So I do at least appreciate that. This movie has way too much of people being lowered down, things falling on them from above, being picked up out of where they are by big robot arms. Someone has was way too into that idea, that visual for this movie. It believes everything it says. I can't believe I'm being upstaged by a tin can. Blair made her choice. The amount of explosions in this movie goes past numbing and reaches hilarious. Like, eventually it has the effect of, like, one of those clown horns. I don't know how to... I can't imitate the sound, but, like, clowns will have them and, like, honk them, and they'll make that, really goofy sound. It's just funny. Like, after a while, it's like, oh, explosion! Just, you can't take it seriously, Again, you're supposed to... If it was a good movie, you would be in the movie. You would experience it. But there's just so many of them, and sometimes a lot within a short space of time. Why does Marcus, like, reach his hand? Like, he knows they're gonna shoot, and he just sticks his hand out, and then they shoot through it. Like, it doesn't accomplish anything. Marcus and Blair trying to escape from the camp is genuinely a fairly effective action scene, which is why it's annoying that it's rendered moot. Why does John fly so close to the water? I mean, we know they know about Hydrobots. They had one on the if they hadn't had one on the table earlier, they could have pretended like Hydrobots were a new thing. But instead, characters just act stupid for no good reason. Why not just have like a small, like there was that scanning robot that we saw earlier that Marcus took out with a thrown, what was it called? Tire iron. Why not have one of those on the table? It didn't have to be a Hydrobot. It didn't have to make this other scene so stupid. Why is John so scared that Marcus will get away from the camp? Why not just fly past the water and like set up like some guys so that when he comes out of the water, he'll, maybe they don't have something they can drop into the water that would destroy Marcus, but just set up some guys. Don't go where the where the robots are. It's just, so stupid. Now, let's see. I get it. They think that Marcus is going to return to Skynet and tell them where the camp is, which is obviously dangerous for them. But there's no reason for John to be risking his life. I mean, does he get this obsessive every single time there's a Terminator? I can get you in. How? Look at me. Let me just step into the lighting so you can see. If we're going to behave like machines, then what is the point in winning? They say that in the show as well, and I feel like maybe the death camps are why. Maybe that's what the point is in winning. Like, maybe no death camps. That'd be nice. I feel like that you can I get that, like, you don't want to lose your humanity, but and ultimately the first movie was won in part because of the humanity. If Kyle hadn't admitted to Sarah that he loved her, then he wouldn't have fathered John. So, but I do still think it's a stupid way to put it. Can we at least get rid of the Skynet death camps before we start talking about, if we give up our humanity, there's no point in winning the war at all. The POV shot where Marcus, you see, like his vision turned completely black again. Again, I have to imagine people who only watched this on DVD or Blu-ray actually worried briefly that there was a problem with the disc or something. I know that John Connor is supposed to be an incredible hacker and that this is a trap, but it's still ridiculously easy for him to get into Skynet Central. At the very least, it seems like John himself should realize that this is a trap. Welcome home, Marcus. You're programmed to do all this. Wasn't it nice of us to fix you, put new flesh and skin on you before revealing all this? 'Cause really, I had forgotten that. I had forgotten how messed up he got from the action scenes up to that point, and they fix him completely. Why would you fix him and then not restrain him, but then explain to him how he's just doomed humanity? Like, just so stupid. Which, again, didn't have to be like that. I think the movie does a decent job of pacing the action. It's not constant, but it's frequent enough. The problem is more that this director is not capable of making the audience care about his characters. And I do understand people who say that it's too Michael Bay. Now that I've watched the entire movie, yeah, I guess ultimately, yeah. I'm gonna talk more about whether or not I don't think he's not as bad as Michael Bay in a lot of ways, but yeah, I don't like Michael Bay's action direction, and I don't like the McGee's imitation of it here. If it wasn't like if the movie was much shorter, maybe, but by the end of the movie, it's gotten to be yeah, it's too much. And this is where I noted that it's only 91 minutes into the movie. How can there possibly be almost half an hour left? But then, you know, let's see, an hour and 50 minutes, that's 110, right? So, yeah, that's still 19 minutes, but yeah. Let's see. Skynet destroys the submarine. I appreciate that they play the victorious part of the Terminator music. I guess it's not the main theme, I don't think, but one of the Terminator related, piece of music when Marcus rips out the chip and throws a chair through the monitor. And as I've said before, it's ridiculous that it's so easy for him to get to the chip. I'm not expecting it to be like deep inside, like a T-800. I realize he's not a T-800, but why would it be so easily to think about? That would actually have been super cool. Imagine if it had been like in his stomach, and they'd be like, you wouldn't do that, and he'd be like, watch me, and just like jam, because it's a metal arm, we know that, jam his hand inside his. That would actually, I would respect that reference a lot. If they had him jam his hand into his own chest, like the Terminator jams his hand into the chest of the punk at the start of the first movie, and then like present, and you don't have to show this. You can just hint at it for the PG-13 rating. And he, he takes it out, and you see like a chip or something, and then he crushes that in his hands, and like does the thing like he does in the movie. But why is it right there, immediately available at the back of his head? Excuse me. Now, let's see. I guess this is unique to the extended cut, but yeah, Kyle was picked up by a T600 and put on a table, and I don't know. I'm not entirely sure what he was going to do, what the T600 was going to do to him, but Kyle had to stop the T600, which from the rest of the movie is really easy, or what. But yeah, it was about to shoot Star, so they did have at least one other Terminator at Terminator Central, there for the trap for John. Let's see. But again, I don't remember seeing that before. I think that was cut. So the let's see. Yeah, again that does help at least a little. But yeah, he just jams a screwdriver into the back of its head, and that's it. And the T800 actually takes apart the T600 because filmmakers think that that's cool, and they'd rather have it look cool than make sense. Look, it was partially disabled, yes, but it was still like shooting, and it's not like it was shooting the T800. So, but yeah, he like grabs it and pulls it like, you know, torso, legs, you know, why not just push it aside slightly or something? But no, you gotta have, there's a there's at least one Star Wars scene like that as well. It's just, why would it be hurting its buddy? Just yeah. Excuse me. When I see the one-eyed, jawless T800 head, I know it's supposed to be like haunting, like it's like a human skull, but it's not complete. But All I can think is, howdy, partner. Let's see. And I do think that that's, you know, like they say in the making of, we haven't seen that before. We have never seen the factory where T-800s are being put together before this movie in a movie. You might have, you know, and you actually do see, you see the eye being put into the eye socket, you see the jaw being attached, you know, and you see like rows of actual T-800 skeletons, you know. Yeah, I don't think it's like some genius decision necessarily, but it's not a bad idea. And the T-800 tricked them into thinking it was coming via the elevator, but instead it comes from behind the assembly line, essentially hiding amongst its partially assembled brother. Excuse me. It's really frustrating to see the T-800 have so many chances to kill John and waste them all. This just, I mean, at least the TXs, you know, in the first movie, it's extremely close to killing Sarah many times, and it really feels like, you know, the movie might actually end. Let's just make sure to write that. I just realized. Like it might end with her death. With Sarah dying. And none of the movies replicate that tension and intensity. And I mean, this one at least only spends very little time botching it completely, but yeah. I mean, it's frustrating in each of the sequels, so yeah. I'll grant that the second one, you know, overall the second one is a great movie, but it was completely unnecessary to have the T-1000 completely and repeatedly humiliated in defeat. Like, I'll grant when the truck explodes around it, that's not humiliating. But so many of the times, it's just that Arnold shoots it in the head, and the head looks all goofy, and then it's if you shoot the T-800 in the head with a shotgun, you're still not that sure that you're gonna, you know, slow it down even. If you don't hit the eye or the trigger finger, you might not even slow it down even a little. Think about how many times Kyle had to shoot it in the club before it finally fell over, and it immediately gets back up. That's a Terminator. The T-1000 gets shot. It's not even a shotgun. It's a rifle. Shot one time, goofy looking head, and then it's just like, see, I really thought I was going to make it through this video barely mentioning Terminator 2. But it just, it's, I, I can't do it. I can't talk Terminator without being frustrated at how that movie, and don't tell me it's scary looking or it's an interesting design. He's humiliated. The T-1000 is repeatedly, and I don't even necessarily have a problem with that in like action movies, but it's a Terminator. The first movie it's basically like a nightmare. It's an entire feature-length nightmare. And then the second one comes in, and he's teaching it he's teaching it 90s teenager slang, and it's just, the fight between Marcus and the T-800 isn't bad. I feel like they talk it up, and the behind the scenes, it's okay, but you know, it's not bad. I realize that Kate is a doctor, but she's also super pregnant. Should she really be in an active combat zone? And like the movie has gone out of its way to show like huge pregnant stomach. And that's again, that's part of the thing with it. And I realized it was set up in the third one, but in this, it's like, oh, she's pregnant. That's a good thing, because if a woman is pregnant, that means, just like the first movie, yes, it's in part about the that Sarah's son will be extremely important, but the movie doesn't spend a lot of time with her pregnant. Just, I'm sorry, but the message the camera is sending me when in this movie it reveals that she's really pregnant is that we're supposed to think that she's more useful for her crap. What's it called? Yeah, it's for her ability to give birth than basically anything else she might be helpful with. And then the movie still goes and says, oh, but because she's a doctor, she saves lives. When, which is fine in the camp, but when she's running out into this, yeah. Now John goes out of his way to save Marcus's life, so he does now consider him a fellow soldier, not a machine. I do appreciate the very clear message of empathy that runs throughout the entire movie, and yeah, yeah, when John first realizes Marcus is a machine, yeah, I mean, yeah, I basically said, we're gonna tear him apart, and figure out, yeah, use that to figure out how to better fight Terminators, so yeah, it legitimately was. I just gotta make sure that it's not trying to update. Okay, it's not trying to update yet. Yeah, I quite appreciate that. His heart can't take it. This whole movie, I mean. Yeah, here we go. I'm not sure there's anything about Kyle Reese in this movie that meant it had to be Kyle Reese. The reason we're supposed to care about it is because he's vital, as we see in the first movie, but I'm not sure there's anything about his characterization in the first movie and his characterization here that means that it had to be him. He's important because he's important to the timeline. He's important because he's important in the other movies. Honestly, this character might as well be an object, may as well be like a secret weapon that John has to get out of Skynet Central. In the first movie, he loves Sarah and he loves John, and he trusts John completely. He says he would die for John Connor, which he does end up doing. Maybe his character in this should have been someone who convinces others to trust John because of how much he trusts him. I get this movie is set before he starts trusting John so much. Let's see, at the start of the movie, he doesn't even know who John Connor is, I don't think. But the question is his character... is his character in this interesting? And my answer would be no, not at all. If he wasn't named Kyle Reese, I wouldn't care at all about this character. And yeah, I mean, yeah, let's hypothetically say that John and Kyle knew each other, and Kyle was kind of the one who was vouching for John. He was the one who was, like, helping convince people, And then he does get taken prisoner, and, yeah, but to just, yeah. Not to be outdone by Marcus, right after Marcus finishes his narration, John does some of his own. But yeah, having now watched the entire movie, some parts of it are fun. I mean, I wouldn't really say that it's ever boring, but yeah, just there. You just don't really care about the characters, and once the movie ends and the credits start rolling, you're just left with kind of an empty feeling. Neither particularly happy nor particularly sad. It's just, well, 2 hours of my life passed. That's about it. There's not, yeah. Now, as I said at the start of this video, even though the TV show came out before this movie, I'm not going to be spoiling much of it in this video. Now, yeah, since, there are people who only watched the movies, not the show. Now, the TV show ran for 2 seasons, and season 2 ends on a new status quo, a setup for season 3 that's very different from what came before. We may never see the actual season 3, but for this movie, they did actually use some ideas that, yeah, from what would clearly be true of season 3. You could almost consider it a follow-up to the show in that regard. Even though the show and, let's see, even though the show and all the movies after the second one are in separate continuities from each other. And see, that's the thing. The before Terminator Genesis ignored movies 3 and 4, Terminator the show ignored movie 3. They didn't feel that was something they didn't want to tell a story set after the third one. And anyway, while the first 2 seasons are, let me think. Yeah, you know what, I guess before the season 3, I'm not going to tell you how much of the show this is true of, but before the teaser for season 3, at the end of season 2, some of the show is set in the year 2007, with Sarah Connor still alive, a reprogrammed female Terminator, and other elements that don't fit with this movie and the third. In the tease for season 3, like in this movie, John Connor is facing a different future from the one he's used to, one where he isn't recognized as a great war hero, or even necessarily expected to become one. Sarah isn't present. He may be or become romantically involved with a young woman involved with the Resistance. He meets Kyle Reese, who doesn't know he will be John's father. There isn't a reprogrammed Terminator that goes around with him and protects him. And there is a male character who teaches Kyle Reese things. So, yeah. I mean, they did genuinely... I mean, I don't know. I have to wonder if that was like... They were kind of tipping their hat to the show, because that is a lot that those two have in common. That like, yeah, I mean, the movie... Yeah, that this movie exists at all is partially, like... I mean, they might have made another movie, even, whether or not the show had gone on, but the show ended, and then this movie came out. It's hard not to feel a little frustrated about this movie if you love the show, as many of us do. And, but yeah, so I can't help but feel like maybe this was in part to say, the show is gone, but you haven't been forgotten completely. There's something, I don't know. There's like an interview or something. I read quotes on, I think, Wikipedia or IMDb or something, of McGee, where he says he respects the show, and he knows Josh Friedman, the show creator, and some of the other people, and he has a ton of respect for their work. But he didn't want to try to follow up. And I really don't think that the idea of a movie that tried to follow up on all the story stuff from the show, that would not be a good idea. There is no way they could do justice to all of it. The show, very much, it is a series. It's serialized. You have a lot of ideas. You could not. It would be impossible to follow up on it and do it justice with just a movie, or honestly even a series of movies. But yeah, I respect that this doesn't use time travel, and that the story is so different even without time travel, they could have had a Terminator going from place to place in the process of finding, excuse me, and then attempting to kill John. If only it was also a good movie. Given that this is set in 2018, I do realize it would have made more sense if I reviewed this last year. When Trump was elected, I thought 2018 might actually end up looking like it does in this movie. Yep, I made a similar joke in my Shazam review talking about Ghostbusters 2, and I'm making it again here. I don't think they should have. I'm going to say they probably shouldn't have shown Marcus at the start of the movie. That should have been a flashback. Like, he doesn't remember what happened before waking up in 2018, and then later he does. Like, he just remembers he did. Like, he says to Blair, "I'm not a good guy," and then she's like, "Why?" And then he's like, "I don't remember. I just know I'm not a good guy." You know, something like that. But yeah, as it is completely obvious that there's something else going on. He can't possibly have survived the execution, not have aged in 14 years, and yeah, you know, like maybe when he's the let's see, when the mine goes off and they drag him, there is this short flashback to like his execution. Maybe that should have been, yeah, maybe, you know, like briefly have some kind of clear hint, you know, there was an execution, and then show like him, you know, signing his signature, and maybe at first you don't see what he signed it for, and then when the camera shows his metal innards, you know, then he has another flashback, and you see what he signed was this, you know, medical, you know, yeah, maybe even, and maybe then have a, you know, just cut me up and use me, or, you know, the line as it is in the movie, and the yeah, you know, but let's see. I will say Anton Yelchin, R.I.P., does bear some resemblance to Michael Biehn. You know, I rewatched Terminator 1, you know, this Monday, and, you know, yeah, I watched Terminator 4 today just before I started recording, and, you know, this is now Saturday. By the time the video is up, it might be Sunday, but yeah. So, you know, to compare their characterizations and performance, and yeah, I mean, I think I can some of the time see, I mean, I don't tend to like when they cast an actor and then say just imitate that other actor's performance, but, you know, I feel like he did his homework, and he does try to, but yeah, it just doesn't, yeah, I've basically said everything I have to say about Kyle in this movie already. So that brings us, that is the wrong paper, that brings us to notes taken before watching. And that, yeah, I really shouldn't be surprised at this point. Yeah, so let's see, an hour and 45 minutes basically, just on the notes I took while watching, and yeah, I don't know how long this video is going to end up being, but I do, yeah, I think I'm just going to, I don't hate McGee. He sounds like a perfectly nice guy. In places like the Charles Angels 2 commentary track, which I listened to because, yeah, I have the DVD. I didn't pay money for it. Somebody else gave it to me. And I watch basically every DVD special feature I can get my hands on. But yeah, you know, also the behind the scenes stuff on this movie. You know, McGee's enthusiastic, and he praises the crew when they get it right. He expects a lot, but he explains what he wants, and he is so happy when they get there. If only he could elicit emotion from the audience, get us, you know, emotionally invested, other than just putting pretty cool action on screen. And let's see. And from what I hear, Michael Bay movies all look the same, where this is the only Michael Bay-like movie, or at least the first of them, that this director did. You know, Charlie's Angels 1 and 2 look completely different from this. The face of the 600 series just looks goofy, both with rubber skin and without, when it's just the bare skull. That's B-A-R-E. And several of the other robot designs just don't quite work. I'm referring to the motorcycle, the snake, and the giant robot that blows up the gas station. Maybe we shouldn't see very many designs of these Skynet robots. Maybe you should stay relatively simple as it is with the first movie. Humanoid Terminators getting into bunkers and clearing them. Tank tread HKs, because tank, at least in 1984, was something that scared people. Even though most audiences hadn't been up close with one, it was still something formidable. Even if you'd only seen them in war movies. You know, today, it's, tank, you know. Today, we're more scared of drones. And the flying HKs, the idea of being attacked from something flying scares us, even though there aren't that many birds that attack humans but I'm not saying snakes, motorcycles, and giant robots can't be scary, or that these are not interesting designs. I think part of what bothers me and others about the motorcycles is that it is filmed like it is. It was filmed in a very different way. Maybe it would feel less like just a modern motorcycle. The two HKs from the first movie are both very big and distinctly non-organic. A tank and a jet. Like Skynet itself, not human. At the end of the day, a snake is an animal. It is something we can categorize as a living thing. The giant robot has too many humanoid traits and can thus come off as just a really big human. Like, honestly, if you took the basic save movements, but then changed, like, instead it was like a giant. Maybe it's like what would be called? With the one eye Cyclops. Maybe it's the Cyclops that, like, in what's he called again? That guy, not Hercules. Crap, what's his name? The guy who blinds the Cyclops and says, and so he's like, no one has blinded me. Let's see. And anyway, yeah, the hypothetically, let's say that you took the basic animation movement and then made him into a Cyclops. I'm not sure it would feel that differently. It's a giant, you know. Ooh, giant, but it's not that it's not the same kind of fear. One of the things is, in the first movie, if a flying HK spots you, it will immediately start gunning you down, and it's incredibly accurate. And if the tank spots you, it will immediately shoot you. I don't think that thing even misses in that first movie. The only time it shoots, it kills the person it shoots at, you know. So yeah, and then you have the giant thing, and they're just like standing and oh no, oh, you know, and some of them are running away. And granted, some of the ones that are running away like reaches out and grabs, but a bunch of them do get away, and it's like, oh, motorcycles though, isn't it scary? Robot motorcycle, it's just, yeah. But yeah, the motorcycle is a motorcycle, and motorcycles are not scary in a post-apocalyptic sense. They're scary if you're trying to avoid getting into a car crash or something, but just, look, they're cool, they're not scary. I know people who love motorcycles, who think they're the coolest thing ever. I have never in my life met a single person who thought that a motorcycle was actually scary. Like, you might be scared of someone going really fast on a motorcycle, or you might be scared of losing control while you're driving a motorcycle, but you're not scared of being killed or captured by a motorcycle. Now, let's see. Yeah. When Marcus is confronted with Helena Bonham Carter's face on the screen, and it goes through other faces, all of them do great, creepy, not quite human acting as playing machines. And again, it's no one's surprised that Helena Bonham Carter plays a great creepy villain, you know. I realize there is a range limit to a remote detonator. So when they're flying away there at the end and they detonate the explosive, maybe they're as far away from the explosion as they could possibly be and still detonate it like that. But it still seems like a ridiculous risk. I mean, in T2, at the very least, those are not nuclear explosions. If Miles Bennett Dyson had not been wounded and there wasn't a SWAT team nearby, I guess they would have set off the explosive from outside of the building and a number of meters away. And if they were standing on the right side of the building, the explosion would not be too dangerous for them. But in this, I mean, this is, they have planes that can fire rockets in this movie. Why not just, like, grab one of them nukes, stick it in one of the rockets, then fire the rockets at the base? Why are people so stupid in this movie and so many other Hollywood movies? It's so frustrating. And you know what? I'll grant the pilot of that plane might not survive, but you know what? There are a lot of people who would be willing to fly that plane as long as it meant putting a serious dent in Skynet. You know, even agreeing to die. But just, yeah. And when John Connor clotheslines a Moto Terminator, that's another thing. And they call that in the movie, so it's not just like a behind the scenes. No, Moto Terminators, someone shouts when they come out of the... Terminators are humanoid robots that look, that can pass as human beings. If it's not a humanoid robot, it's a hunter-killer. Or, you know, give it another name, but not Terminator. Those are not Terminators. They're not gonna... When John Connor clotheslines a Moto Terminator, he actually holds one of the ends of the rope by hand. I'm not saying action movies have to be particularly realistic, but that is just ridiculous. It would have pulled his arm from his socket or something. And all they had to do was have him tie both ends instead of holding one end in his own hand. So stupid. Obviously, the trap at the end makes no sense. They want John dead, and they know that a dead Kyle Reese gets them that. It means he can't travel back in time and father John. So why not kill him instead of taking him to the facility? They don't need to lure John in. They just need Kyle to die before he can travel back in time. And as I'm not going to point out in other parts of this video, as I am going to point out in other parts of this video, referring to other problems, a quick rewrite and it's fixed. Have it be that they're gonna graft Kyle's face onto the T-800. And at that point, either send it at John today or send it back in time to 1984. That way, there are two T-800s trying to kill Sarah, and one of them looks exactly like the person who does gain her trust in the movie. I grant it's more complicated than it needs to be, but if they so badly want Kyle to be a prisoner there at the end, it explains why the machines don't kill him when they first find him. You know what? That might actually be what the T-600 was gonna do when it grabs him and is about to like strap him to a table. And that is what in the original ending they did with Marcus, you know, basically they took John's face and put it onto Marcus, and then Marcus becomes a killer robot. But yeah, as it is, the movie does not explain this. For Bale, same Batman voice, same Batman performance. I don't mind his performance in the Batman movies that much, but in this, it just doesn't work. It's not a compelling... yeah, he's shouting to people on the radio, or he's really, like, intense and stoic and such, and just, yeah. The references to the first two films are annoying, like in T3, and I maintain not in Genesis. They're not annoying. Let's see. Yeah, as far as I know, I've only watched this movie once before, and that was in 2009 in the movie theater. Other than that, I've only watched clips and reviews. This is a movie that I remember a lot of individual details about. The mute black kid with Home Alone traps, the attempted rape scene with Moon Bloodgood, and her rescue at the hands of Marcus, John hacking a motorcycle, the Transformer-style robot at the gas station, and some of the details about the human prisoners, etc. But I don't remember at all. I didn't remember at all how it feels to watch, if it's exciting or boring. And yeah, now having watched it, I don't get emotionally involved in most of it. Now, let's see. Yes, as mentioned, I rewatched the original Terminator, among other movies, in preparation for this review. The first Terminator movie, I mean, I'm never gonna completely feel like I've said everything I want to say about that movie, but here's some more. It's gripping, emotionally devastating, almost torturous, draining, exhausting. This is especially true of the ending scenes, from when Arnold catches up to them at the motel and to the end credits start rolling. Terminator 3 is none of these things, except maybe torturous, but for the wrong reason. And yeah, I noted from what I remember, Terminator 4 isn't either, and yeah, it's not. I think it is trying to be as intense and, like, you know, overpowering. That's another. The first movie is overpowering, and this movie, yeah, I mean, ultimately it is overpowering, but it's not emotionally involving, and because of that, the overpowering stuff just becomes, yeah, it doesn't have the right kind of impact. It's just, yeah. Let me just make sure to note to say that as well. T1 overpowered. Overpowered. As now, right, so I took some notes on the trailers. The trailer is so much better than the movie. And yeah, and John says in the trailer, something's wrong. Skynet is taking human prisoners. Kyle Reese in the first movie. Some of us were kept alive, to work, loading bodies. Swing and a miss, writers. You know, it really wouldn't have been very difficult to recut the trailer that gives away that Marcus is a robot. I guess if you show that other characters like Kate and John are shocked at seeing him, that might be too much of a hint that he's a cyborg. But just don't have that part in there. I mean, I'm almost certain this was before trailers started using CG to trick audiences into expecting certain things like the MCU does with, you know, I don't blame them for that. I think they do some amazing things there. But a number of the trailers for more recent movies, so I'm not expecting them to make him appear in the shot, to make him appear human in the shot where he's clearly a cyborg. But just, I mean, it didn't need to be in there because it's not even really what the trailer is like centered on. The trailer is centered on this idea of the future war. It would be very easy to not, yeah. Maybe they put the twist in the trailer where that no one would watch, quote unquote, just a Terminator movie that didn't have an evil Terminator main character and time travel. I don't know. Let's see. I guess. Let's see. Oh, never mind. That was it. Right. Yeah. The yeah. I watched Spoomy's old vlog about the movie from right after he came back from the theater, and he points out, you know, how do the machines know that Kyle Reese will become a threat since this is before they've sent any Terminators back in time? And you know, it's very well worth noting. Let's hypothetically say, you know, I think the idea is, you know, oh, the timeline has been changed because of the third movie, the TX. what it did at CRS changed things. But let's hypothetically pretend that that isn't, because I mean, if that's the case, then maybe Kyle Reese doesn't need to go back in time at all. Maybe that could happen without Kyle Reese. Anyway, hypothetically, let's say that this was the same timeline. If that's the case, yes. If the Terminators knew in the year 2018 that killing Kyle Reese would mean there would be no John Connor, then they would have reprogrammed, the Terminator in the first movie, it is not trying to kill Kyle. It is trying to kill Sarah. It will sometimes shoot at Kyle, but it really isn't. If it was going after Kyle, it would have behaved very differently in a number of scenes. So, no, let's see. So yeah, but yeah, I get it's probably not supposed to be the same timeline. But yeah, you know, right. So Spoonie points out, this is before they've sent Terminators back in time. Honestly, this would be easy to fix with a quick rewrite. Have time travel occur in the movie, and yeah, but they probably wanted to make a movie completely without time travel. But they made the mistake where the screenwriter knows what's going to happen in the movie, in the story, but the characters don't know yet. I was rewatching the X-Men movies in preparation for Dark Phoenix, and as IMDb points out, members of the team talk about specifically where they're flying to find Nightcrawler in a scene that occurs before Charles Xavier finds out where they're going to find Nightcrawler. Sometimes writers mess stuff like that up, but yeah, you couldn't. Anyway, an easy fix is writing time travel. The first 3 movies each happened because each time a Terminator was sent back in time because they realized that they lost the war and can only win it in the past. So with this movie, there should have been a 4th Terminator sent back, and this Terminator would either be the Helena Bonham Carter character that we see in the movie, or would force that character to do what she does. Voila, you have a character who has future knowledge and could set up this plan. I realize the idea of this movie is that this is the very first time they make T-800s, but the first 3 movies are also set before they were making T-800s. So, and let's see. Right, and since the excuse me, what was that? Okay. Yeah, so this film gets compared to Michael Bay, which made me wonder, is its male character, or rather, it was an excuse to rewatch Lindsay Ellis's excellent series on the Transformers movies, which she calls The Whole Plate. And yeah, so since Michael Bay, his male characters are toxic, his female characters are objectified, and his camera is always moving, which I understand gets to be exhausting. I've barely watched any Bay, but I think he does it in Armageddon, and that might be one of the reasons that I truly despise that movie. I don't think I would be able to sit through very much of it if I ever had to try again. If I recall, I gave that movie a 1 out of 10, and that's very rare for me to hate a movie that much. But man, is that movie horrible in so many ways. Now, let's see. Yeah, so I'm not just going to quote everything she said. You should watch her videos yourself if you haven't already, even if you don't care about Transformers, because I really, really don't care about Transformers. I hate that such a toxic series is so popular today. But other than that, I don't think I'm ever gonna watch a single one of the movies. Now, let's see. But yeah, I don't care about the movies, but I love her videos on yeah. Now, let's see. So, Right. So yeah, in the Transformers movies, there are almost no female robots. If you there are quickly killed off or are pure evil. I talked about the TX in my video for Terminator 3. She's the only female Terminator outside of the Chronicles TV show, and the show I talked about in the videos. I do not, yeah, it's just briefly. I can't stand the third movie would be a much better movie if either they got rid of all the really nasty anti-woman stuff, or honestly, the TX could so easily have been male. If the choice is male or a female that's so like so hatefully constructed, then I really yeah I'm sorry I don't because the show shows it doesn't have to be like that. There's definitely female gender stuff from the female robots on the show, but yes, there's more than one. I'm not going to give away how many, but there's more than one. That's not a spoiler. The let's see. Yeah, it's not anti-woman and it's not like this kind of so yeah, you know, the show explores well this sort of yeah, but yeah, there's no real gender coding on the non-Terminator robots, and I mean, yeah, this movie doesn't really have issues with women, which I mean, again, I mean, it takes over a character that from the third movie, which I mean, again, I just rewatched it yesterday, so it's very clear in my mind. Man, does that movie hate women? Like, I don't know if like you know whatever writer's mom told him you know one too many times to do his homework, or if like they were turned down by a woman they wanted to date, but just seriously deal with your issues and do it outside of movies or other creative expression. It's just like if you're that hateful, I honestly, if you're that hateful, I would almost say just go ahead, get on camera, get on YouTube, and start talking about how much you hate women so that people know to avoid you. Because as it is, like, I don't know exactly who is to blame for that. I mean, let's see, Jonathan Mostow, I don't remember the women being toxic in representation in Surrogates. So if it's him, he didn't do it in that movie. Let's see. Yeah. Anyway, the right. I don't think this movie really has issues with women, which the third one has in spades. Now, but yeah, as I mentioned, one of the women is pregnant, but she is also a doctor. The ability to heal others is sometimes viewed as a feminine trait, so that's positive. And she saves John's life at the end. Huge contribution to the plot. And obviously, that means she is essentially an object. They could have replaced her with a robot that could perform that surgery. It's not really her showing agency. And Moon Bloodgood's character, the tough pilot, I mean, I do think that it's a problem that she basically betrays the human race because she considers this one guy really human. Like, she doesn't try to talk them out of it, or at least not for very long. She just, yeah, I just, hypothetically. And that's, I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Originally, the movie would have proven her wrong. At the end of the movie, he was supposed to be like a killer robot, and he would have John Connor's face, so people would trust him, and he would, yeah. So originally, the she was supposed to be completely wrong in her decision to favor him. Now, let's see. And yeah, I would definitely say that I don't think this movie. Let me actually hold on. You know, thinking about it, I guess, yeah, I just didn't remember a lot of the details. But yeah, to quote Lindsay Ellis, Michael, yeah, some of this is paraphrasing. Michael Bay also hates the male protagonists. Pick any scene from these movies, and if it's not a soldier thing, it's two men being angry at each other over nothing. And really, I mean, there is a bunch of that in this movie. People who don't trust each other and are angry at each other for no good reason. Yeah, you know what? This is closer to a Michael Bay movie than I initially. It's not as bad as I can tell that the. I mean, I'm basically. I take Lindsay Ellis. I I would say Lindsay Ellis has conveyed how much the Transformers movies hate women in and men in her videos discussing the movies. So yeah, the yeah, the movie doesn't hate women as much as Michael Bay movies, but other than that, yeah. Let's see. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that's a huge difference. Like Michael Bay's, you know, it's about, oh, look at these cool robots doing cool robot stuff. But at the end of the day, this movie is very much about empathy, which, from, again, based on Lindsay Ellis' discussion of the movies, the Transformers movies are very, yeah, like emotion and emotional attachment is basically seen as automatically weak and feminine and negative. Now, the seventh episode she made is the episode where she discusses the framing of Megan Fox's character, and I have to say that is by far my favorite of the whole series that she did. I really think it's very telling, the framing of her character. If if Lindsay Ellis ever does make the follow-up series that she teased directly beneath the enemy scrotum, I'll watch the hell out of it. And let's see. Yeah, and I noted here, you know, John mistrusts Marcus, as do other humans once they learn he's a cyborg. Ironside mistrusts Connor for some reason. But I thought that other than that, characters get along in this film, but no, really, there does tend to be, like, frustration and disagreement and anger. Yeah. Now, let's see. I. Right. Here. Oh, now I know why I keep feeling like leaning in. It's because I forgot to zoom. And. Yeah. There we go. I might have to scroll. For some reason, when I zoom, it automatically goes away from the page. Oh, was that was too far? Yes. Here we go. Now, yeah, I mentioned the numerous helicopter crashes in my old vlog about this film, and how, you know, yeah, Connor keeps surviving all these helicopter crashes. And yeah, all 5 Terminator movies released up to this point have vehicle crashes. And yes, by the start of this movie, there had been a lot of crashing. Motorcycles, different types of cars. But having 2 helicopter crashes not hurt or even kill everyone inside is just plain silly. The helicopter and plane crashes in Terminator 3 tend to only have Terminators walking unscathed away. You know, Terminators tend to walk unscathed away from most of the crashes in these. You know, mostly might get a limp. You know, let's see. Yeah, the only reason the crash might badly affect a Terminator is if the crash leaves him covered in liquid nitrogen. A truck can literally explode around a Terminator. He can be covered in fireball and still walk away. But you can't have human characters walking away from helicopter crashes. This is just ridiculous. And that, let's see. Right, and in the old video, I said that, like, let's see, that John, that John would die, and that Marcus would be leading, Terminator leading the Resistance. That's interesting. And then, you know, did I get that wrong? Wasn't it that when Marcus looked like John Connor, he killed everyone rather than leading the Resistance? And I'm not entirely sure. Maybe there's more than one ending that, yeah. And okay, let's see some other reviews. And right, so here we go. This is where I get into the Blu-ray extra features. Now, there's maximum, the extended director's cut with maximum movie mode, which runs 2 hours, 2 hours and 2 minutes, so just slightly longer than, you know, the director's cut with end credits is 1 hour and 57 minutes, so 4.5 minutes, Now, some of the helicopter spinning was done for real in front of a green screen. And there's this feature called Movie IQ, which is basically, apparently, like IMDb would trigger certain info at corresponding times in the film. This feature requires BD Live, which it says I don't have the space on the player for. I don't think, I'm not sure my player has space at all. So, you know, it does sound like a very good idea. And there's something called CineChat, which also requires BD Live. Also sounds like a good idea. Now, the specific featurettes. There's one called Reforging the Future, where they talk about making the future dirty, no luxury, everything is hard. And they make a point to say there's no technology from past the date of Judgment Day, which I respect that. You know, I grant, like, if there are plasma rifles in the year 2029, I mean, in the first movie, Kyle specifically says there was a war a few years from now. If he meant 1997, I don't think he would have said a few years. He would have said 13 years from now. So, literally every single sequel does change when, you know, when Judgment Day was. I'll grant, if nukes had hit major cities all around the world in 1984, I'm not 100% certain how a bunch of soldiers have plasma rifles in 2029. You know, how are they able to work on these kinds of things at such a high level? How do they have access to the materials and are able to keep it hidden from the, you know, in the 1980s, you could say, you know, if you showed the future and it didn't have, you know, ray guns, to quote the Dr. Silverman, I honestly, people probably would have said that can't be the future. It doesn't look like the future. You know, you have to have some kind of futuristic stuff in there, and I'll grant it doesn't make sense. Same as it doesn't make sense that, you know, the whole post, what's it called? Yeah, you know, the out crap when nukes, you know, the after effects of nukes, the radiation. yeah. So let's see. But yeah, I respect. It does make more sense that they wouldn't have new stuff after Judgment Day, but they forgot. They didn't make the fight seem impossible, which is the big. And they made the Silver Terminator black like metal would in time. I don't really take issue with that. Basically, the silver design of the original was because it was a striking visual, not because it was realistic. I don't remember for sure, but I think James Cameron specified it was silver colored in his fever dream, and that was what he wanted to put on screen. Christian Bale says, I love people who are obsessed with what they do. These guys are obsessed with making models. I think that's wonderful. I 100% believe that he does. He, yeah, he likes obsession in other people as much as he likes it in himself. Again, I like him as an actor. I'm not sure his approach to method acting is healthy. Yeah, I'm just briefly gonna, some of this stuff you're gonna be tearing out your hair. But I'm not gonna be commenting on it. But not everybody has access to these special features, so I'm just briefly. McGee says, I hate action for action's sake. There will be no unmotivated action in this movie. And they worked really hard to make the 7-Eleven part be in one shot, and I'm just like, but it doesn't matter. It's not emotionally engaging. It's just competently made anyway. And they talk about the CG Arnold, and I'm just briefly going to say, ultimately it's not completely convincing. It's just too smooth, and there was like the yeah, they were like, oh, but he's smooth because they have to cover his face in like a sort of gelatinous mass or something, to as part of the process, and that's why he looks so smooth. It's not convincing, And originally, what they were gonna do was have like a grenade melt the face off if they couldn't get it convincing, which is, ultimately later in the fight that is what happens. But they thought it was convincing enough, so they used the regular one. Now, and their explanation for why these Terminators can be taken out with bullets is that they've not yet built the T-800, which they do build at the very end of the movie. So at least it's not that they just didn't realize that it's inconsistent with the other movies. It's just stupid, because why would you not give them better armor if they're going out there and shooting people who have guns? Why don't they have better? It's just, yeah. And they call the Moto Terminator Skynet's attack dogs, a futuristic version of a motorcycle. And McGee was like, it's got to be Ducati. We talked to Ducati and used Ducati monsters as the impetus. They have to move really fast and be super agile. A living bike on its own, it's mechanical, but it has the ability to think and drive itself. It had to be sort of this autonomous killer robot that's also a motorcycle, always a little more menacing, if anything. And the sub-driver talks about how it's difficult to drive these things. Considering that it's so close to a regular motorcycle, you have to wonder why they didn't make it easier to ride. And when you see Moto Terminators riding in the movie, at least some of the time, it's a real, it's actually that motorcycle. They just used effects to take away the stunt driver. And yeah, I don't think it's all the time, but yeah, personally, I find them silly and goofy in concept, execution, and design. Before John rides one like a normal motorcycle. And then they have these about 30 minutes worth of what they call focus points. And I mean, some of this information is on the, if you look up, I think it's under focus points on IMDb. If you look up Terminator Salvation and you go under Movie Connections and you click under Featured In, focus points are going to come up, and that has some of the details. So I'm only going to be using the stuff I'm commenting on. Several helicopters and planes were real in the film, although some were filmed in front of blue screens and such, but some of them apparently did fly and, you know, almost sort of start to crash for real, and Moonblood had to learn how to be a realistic female A-10 fighter pilot by a real female A-10 fighter pilot. They built the gas station. People thought it was an amazing location that they found. And let's see. Yeah, they did a conference call with Stan Winston Studios, and they said the smooth look could be because of KY jelly. And they pointed out that Schwarzenegger would clench his jaw while playing the Terminator, which gave him a very distinct look. And they do, you know, you can tell when you compare. Yeah, they do have him clench his jaw in the cameo version of this. Let's see. Now, let's guess that. Yeah, and I watched the Everything Wrong with Terminator Salvation, and yeah, again, just wanted to briefly say, you know, it's so, and you know, it's frustrating to see humans easily take out robots, even with makeshift weapons like thrown tire iron, a Home Alone trap, or the like. And yeah, this is one of the Twin Perfect people. They've just straight up decided that, I don't know if it's all of their videos, but a lot of their videos are now called "You Are Wrong About This Movie" or "This is this." You know, their video is now called "Time Travel is Wrong in the Terminator," when it used to be called "Fridge Logic Terminator Reviews," something like that. And it's, I appreciate the trolling of just this really clickbait title, and just, it's just too bad because they did actually put together a proper, like, it really emulates very nicely the opening credits of the first movie, where it says Fridge Logic the Terminator. So yeah. Yeah, and they point out in all 4 movies the Terminator throws targets, which is great for increasing tension, but bad for killing targets. That is true, but it definitely happens, like, I'm almost 100% certain it happens more, at least in the 4th movie, and maybe also the 3rd movie, than in the first one. And honestly, the second one, I'm not entirely sure if the Terminator ever throws anyone that it means to kill in that entire movie. I'll freely admit, in the first movie, it does with Matt. You know, like 4 times on screen, possibly more off. One of my extremely few problems with the first movie. But in Terminator 2, yeah, in that first, you know, when it throws that one guy onto the grill or whatever it's called, you know, so into the kitchen and onto the cooker, and throws that other guy out the window. I'm not sure he's trying to kill them. You know, the Terminator, the T-800, almost doesn't kill anybody at all in the second movie, and even before John tells him he can't, he seems to be trying not to, so I don't think he throws anybody that he's trying to kill. Now, let's see. And there's the abridged script of, let's see, of the movie itself, and honestly, yeah, ultimately, I don't really have any comments on it. I just made sure to copy in a bunch of stuff that I liked and see if I had anything to say. Let's see. Yeah, let me just briefly. I copied in a single of the comments. I would say it's a perfectly decent abridged script. It's not the best on the site, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. You know, if you just want to laugh at the movie, you know, it doesn't take very long to read the script itself. There are a lot of comments, so I'm not gonna, you know, some of the comments are well worth reading, but I'm not gonna tell you just go and read all of them. I wanted to highlight this comment. This script was awesome from the very first line. This isn't the future my mother warned me about. That future definitely had lasers. I'm sure of it. That future would have been totally sweet. That was the very reason I didn't go to see this movie in theaters. I've been waiting and waiting for them to finally make the movie about the war, with lasers and giant tanks and cool sci-fi stuff, and we get this. From everything I've read about the movie, it sounds just as bad as it looked in the trailer. Well, maybe I'll rent it sometime just to compare it to the script and laugh. But yeah, it really is like, yeah, the let me think. Yeah, I don't really have anything to add, especially. Let's see. That brings us to Marcus. Let's see. Excuse me. Now, let's see. Yes, so very Philip K. Dick to have a humanoid robot not realize it's a robot, and you know yeah, you know, the possibility of that robot being a trap is something that he brings up in some of his writings. But yeah, in this movie with Marcus and in a number of Philip K. Dick stories, exploring the line between human being and humanoid robot. If you were a humanoid robot, but you had memories of being human and no memories of being turned from a human into a robot, how would you know that you were now a robot? What defines your identity? Are you human if you used to be, but now your body has been replaced by that of a machine? What part of you makes you human? Your brain, your physical body? And in Terminator 2, Arnold's Terminator is a killer robot that's made human. Marcus in this is a human that was attempted to be made into a robot, but whose humanity remains intact. Now, let's see. In the first movie is about a killer robot that effectively passes for a human being. So what it means to be human is challenged in all three films, and yeah, like I said in my video about the third Terminator movie, yeah, it doesn't especially bring anything new to the table. I guess maybe the idea that the robot, the killer robot, can be turned back into a killer robot like that, but that doesn't last particularly long. It's not. I would have respected Terminator 3 if very early in the film, honestly, for one thing, let's hypothetically say that the killer robot, the evil killer robot, was actually played by Arnold Schwarzenegger. So that now John had to shoot the robot that he used to call father. You know. Now, let's see. And yeah, as others have noted, Marcus is way more interesting than anybody else in this movie, especially John, not just including John. And Marcus may well be the single most interesting character in any Terminator movie by far, but I wouldn't say that he reaches the levels that the several characters on the Terminator show reach. And that was a very short section because honestly, I couldn't find that much to say about Marcus that hadn't been said. So IMDb, Wikipedia, and critic sites are, yeah, this is the final section. Now, why did critics go so hard against this, but not T3? T3 isn't impressive compared to this, or compared to much of anything, but critics really didn't. If you look at Rotten Tomatoes, it has. It's not certified fresh, thankfully. I'm pretty sure, but I don't. It's not rotten. I think it is fresh. Yeah. And if you read the reviews, yeah, a bunch of them say, it could be better, but it's good action. I've already talked enough about I just don't understand why the yeah. Let's see. Yeah, this has a 33% on the tomato meter and 50% audience score. But yeah, the consensus is with storytelling as robotic as the film's iconic villains, Terminator Salvation offers plenty of great effects, but lacks the heart of the original films. See, I don't know that I would rather watch the third movie than this one. I had forgotten, when I watched the third one to review it, weeks and weeks ago, before I started watching the TV show, I had, it had been, yeah, I hadn't watched it since 2003. So there was definitely, let's see, yeah, there's definitely, there are things in the third movie that if it's been a while since you watched it, it can maybe have an effect just because it's somewhat new to you. But watching it again yesterday, I barely got into any of the action. And I'm not going to claim that, again, from a technical standpoint, the action is fairly well handled. There's just there's so many things in the third where it's like, why? I had forgotten that the TX specifically chooses the crane. Of all there are police cars and like fire rescue stuff. She gets into most the biggest and most cumbersome vehicle. I realize it can drive fairly fast, at least in the movie. I'm not sure it could drive that fast in real life. But why didn't she just get in a police car? Control one police car, get in the other one, and then yeah, push. Like she does actually push between John. Push John in between two cars, and then she could shoot from one of those cars to John. Instead of the crane. It just ultimately she's so easy to take out to the T800 for various reasons. That wouldn't be if she was in one of those cars. Yeah, it's just honestly all she. Yeah, it's just yeah. Actually, she's got a flamethrower in her arm. If she drives up right next to him and pushes in against with the two cars, all she has to do is yeah, point the flamethrower arm and just even if the window is down, it's not gonna be able to last against that for very long. Anyway, let's see. Unfortunately, whenever this film attempts to pick anything resembling the motivational keys of emotional storytelling, love, revenge, anger, it feels like McG is wishing he could be blowing stuff up. Maybe. I mean, he does. I don't know if it's specifically blowing stuff up, but he does. I mean, he is more focused on visuals. He doesn't do that well with emotional, and that's fine for the what's it called? If all you're doing is crap, what was I going to say? If all you're doing, right, when he was making music videos, you know, the visuals were incredibly important, and yeah, there are a lot of music videos where you don't connect to the. There are some where you do, but yeah, I can understand why he didn't, but it's just not a. Are they really that? Yeah, it's just it's you know the I don't know if he is still making movies, and ultimately I don't. Part of the reason I don't know is that I don't care that much, but I do think. Let's see. Yeah, so the if he would just if if he could get much if he could learn how to do how to evoke emotion from the audience, I do think that just yeah, I he's clearly he knows how to do the technical aspects. A lot of directors who know how to get emotion out of the audience don't have a lot don't have a great handle on the you sometimes you find directors who do great on both. The MCU has been very fortunate to find a number of them. You know, the Russo brothers are incredible at both. Now, right, I'm just briefly going to highlight. Yeah, this one guy said in his review, the whole ordeal made me fantasize about building a time machine so I could send a cyborg into the past to terminate McGee's mother before she could give birth to him. What a not at all unbelievably messed up thing to say about a real person, not a fictional one. You know, he hasn't like committed genocide or something. Like, dude, seek help, get some therapy. How can you say that about just he made a film you don't like? That's all. It's not even a hateful film. Like I could understand like if you said that about Zack Snyder because you watched 300, I could at least understand. I saw like a critic say that Adolf and his boys or something would have loved 300, you know. And yeah, I could absolutely see how that, you know, I could maybe understand that, but all he did was make a movie you didn't like, or maybe make several movies you didn't like, but that's all. I mean, I really don't think that this movie encourages hatred against anyone the way that, you know, Michael Bay encourages hatred, especially against women. And yeah, I'm not going to claim the 300. I mean, I don't think that Zack Snyder wants to encourage any kind of negative activity. I think he just likes that he likes these extremes, and he maybe doesn't think about the kind of okay. So here we have some stuff that I might get into. The yeah, I don't think he thinks about that there are real people who are, you know, who aren't white, who are disabled, who, yeah, all these things, you know, he doesn't really think about that. He just wants to make something that really gets to you, you know. But I could more understand someone saying that they thought that was disgusting, but saying it about Terminator Salvation, come on. Yeah, so this guy says confusing plotline even for a Terminator flick. Others are confusing? I mean, I don't know. I can maybe see how it could be confusing. And he points out, it doesn't have the Terminator movie feel. And see, I mean, this guy, he's got more of a sense of like, what's it called? Not scale, but like, yeah, I think you know what I mean. It's basically like scale. I know we can't jail directors or writers for making a bad movie, but they should be forced to make a public apology and banned from writing and directing for a year. See, he gets that, I get wanting to punish them for it. Now, let's see. I guess, yeah, several point out that the characters are very shallow. Tries to be a dramatic war movie, but fails. Let's see. Yeah, so this guy says, sure, there could have been more nuance and more piles of skulls, and this isn't Cameron's vision of the 80s cyberpunk future, but how can anyone expect it to be? I don't know. I guess because it's the same movie series and it isn't dependent on something that is no longer accessible, like, say, an actor who since died. Maybe that. Look, if you don't care, that's fine. But how can anyone expect it to be? I'm not that angry at him. I'm angry that the movie is not better. You'll have to bear with me. In 2 days, I've watched 2 bad Terminator movies, and one of them reminds me that we could have had a third season to the amazing TV show. Let's see. And then this guy. Finally, we get to see some great visual effects for the Terminator franchise. The first three all have excellent ones for the time. And apparently he wrote this in 2019. I don't know what he thinks is so amazing about the special effects in this movie by 2019 standards. The stuff that's good tends to be practical stuff with just like the act like stunt people, digitally removed and such. Now, let's see. I guess this might be more or less. Am I seriously still only okay? I'm on page 74 of 246. Now I'm not gonna like as soon as I find. Let's see. Yeah, I'm just gonna. Let's see. Right, I'm sorry. I just have to. There's this one review. There was a no-name black child actress in this movie that literally had 0 lines. She's mute, you dope. It's quite clear. I mean, I don't think it's mentioned in dialogue, but it is completely clear that she is mute. Just, wow. I also don't no name. I guess it's important whether or not it's a star. I think her name is Jada Grace. I saw someone else say she has one name, which is apparently offensive to some people. I really think it's great that some people remember what the important things are in today's society. You know, with all the problems that we have. You know, I mean, a minimum wage that's too low. You know, wars in the Middle East being fought just so that some people can get rich. But then on the other hand, did you know there's an actor who's not white who has a name that's unusual? I mean, just do you people just have no actual problems in your lives that this is the kind of stuff that you get upset about? I saw someone in like a some kind, maybe it was an abridged script of the maybe what's it called, the Spider-Man Homecoming maybe or something, and they were like, "Oh, I guess now you're allowed to be named Zendaya," and it's like, this is seriously something that's bothering you in just how can you have so little going on in your life that that's something that bothers you? That some people like, are you jealous? Is that it? Are you like, my mom didn't name me anything cool? Just like, again, you know what? I once read about someone who wanted to name their child, let's see, I think it was like Hitler bin Laden or Hitler Hussein or something like that, because he was conceived on Hitler's birthday and born on, again, I don't remember if it was Osama bin Laden or if it was Saddam Hussein or you know, their birthday, and then that's a name you can get upset at someone being called. Anyway, I'm just gonna throw out a blanket. There are some really great reviews of this movie on Rotten Tomatoes and on Metacritic. I'm not gonna go over all of them in this. So there's this one review that says the result is a movie that takes itself far more seriously than the Hasta La Vista Baby tone of previous installments. More than the 1984 original. Some people just don't remember the first movie, and it pisses me off because it's an amazing movie. None of the other movies would exist if the first one wasn't so freaking amazing, and people just, no, this movie doesn't take itself more seriously than the first movie did. And don't give me into that, oh, but the first one has got all this comic relief. This movie has jokes too. Some of these jokes, some of the jokes in this movie are more kind of dry, but there are still jokes. Let's see. Right, yeah, this guy says Bale even cedes the juiciest part to Aussie newcomer Sam Worthington. I mean, I guess that's one way to look at it, but it sounds to me like he thought that Connor was the better role. Now, let's see. I guess that. Okay, so this is one. Yeah, just briefly. Yeah, this one reviewer says missing is Cameron's signature action modification, best exploited in Aliens. The strapping female heroine. McGee's testosterone-induced world feels a little doomed without her. And yeah, I've basically already said this, but just briefly, women in this and T3 are represented a lot worse than in Terminators 1 and 2. But again, it's not anywhere near as bad in this as, yeah, the third one is really, really, yeah. And I have now reached the Metacritic user reviews. Okay, here we go. The yes, at least one reviewer, I think several, said the subplot of the frequency that can shut down Terminators doesn't really go anywhere. To which I say, what do you mean? It has the twist that it turns out it was a trap, and Skynet destroys the subs with the leadership in them. Excuse me. Let's see. And yeah, and he says the final battle is a bit lackluster, and yeah, I mean, I can see what it's again the if the movie had dared to go further away, stray further from the formula of the first three movies, yeah, honestly, like at the end of the day, yeah, after an hour and a half of a war movie, the climax is like that of the first three. An evil Terminator fights a good guy, most likely a good guy robot. You know, even the setting's the same, but that I don't necessarily think is a yeah. It's all this, you know. No, I think it could actually have been interesting if it was a bit, yeah, a very different. Although I mean, by the end you're absolutely exhausted of the action. But yeah, it would have been, it could have been very cool, interesting, very different kind of action scene. Honestly, maybe it would have been a good time to, let's see, yeah, the let's see, yeah. So the maybe that would have been a good time to have like the good guys jump into tanks and planes and there be a big battle, you know. Now, let's see. Yeah, this one guy says, you know, general lack of actual battles in favor of Mad Max. Yeah, well, but what was the, let's see, in 2007, the third Resident Evil movie came out. That also had a real Mad Max thing going. And then this came out in 2009. Was there something around the mid to late 2000s where people were like, let's make more Mad Max? I mean, Mad Max Fury Road was, ah, I don't remember exactly what year that came out, but it definitely wasn't all the way back then. Maybe 2015 or something. Let's see. Lots and lots of reviews. Yes, I do think that it would have been, yeah, it wouldn't have been very similar to the rest of the movie. I mean, that is the thing. Basically, the action in this movie very much focuses on placing the audience being right there with the, you know, yeah, and someone points out, you know, that Kate is barely in the movie. She didn't say much of anything, I don't think, and she was pregnant, but they don't mention that at all. And yeah, I've already said it in other words, but I like how I phrased it here, because a lot of sexist ableist thinks that the only thing a woman can contribute is having children. Let's see. Lots and lots of reviews. See, that's the thing. If you like, the if you do get on a kick of like, I want to read every single review written about, say, the fourth Terminator movie, if you read every single user review on Metacritic, there are a lot. I guess. Okay, so we're on page 109, 246, and I'm starting to wonder if I should just, you know what, yes, I am going to, I'm making an executive decision here. Oh, sorry, that probably bounced the camera. This shouldn't, though. Okay, so fast scrolling through reviews. Wow, there are a lot of reviews. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is IMDb. Let's see. Oh, wow. Okay, so right. Let's see if this will get there. I need to scroll faster. This is okay, here we go. This is the end. There we go. Oh, thank goodness. There we go. Okay, so IMDb, and I'm starting with trivia. McGee wanted the cast and crew to read The Road by Cormac McCarthy and Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. I haven't read The Road. The movie is amazing. I might read The Road at some point. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is quite good. I don't think it's his best work. But yeah, the book that was the basis for Blade Runner, because he wanted them to absorb the bleakness of the world in the novels. And it's just, again, like, it's really not that. It's just, it's not that compelling of a, like, it's supposed to feel like oppressive. It's like The Road does an amazing job, and Blade Runner, both the original and the 2017 sequel, do amazing at really creating this world that you're horrified to find your, yeah. Excuse me. Michael Ironside accepted his role in this movie despite having just broken 3 vertebrae in a roofing accident. Notice that throughout the movie he never sits down because of the intense pain. Michael Ironside is so badass. I'm not saying it's not really a good thing that he's like, I mean, dude should probably be resting and on painkillers, but wow. Let's see. Yeah, I'm just going to read this entire. Christian Bale later stated that when he was approached for the film, he expressed the same concerns to director McGee that the Terminator fan base was expressing about him taking over the franchise. Bale told him, "Nothing in your filmography suggests that you have what it takes to do this movie properly. Hello, director, and also F you." Wow. I mean, he's not wrong, but it's still, yeah, yeah. And let's see, yeah, and McGee ultimately convinced Bale to give him a chance so he could evolve as a director. As of 2014, Bale admitted that the film didn't work, considering that it was ultimately Mujib who blew it. He also stated that he would never work with Mujib ever again, although he wished him well. He wished him well! However, in a 2018 interview, he blamed script problems for the film's inability to reinvigorate the franchise. I think it's some of all of, yeah. Let's see. And apparently, Jonathan Nolan was asked to rewrite the script and conceive a wonderful story, but due to the writer's strike, he was called away due to a prior commitment and was unable to implement most of his ideas. And because of that, he remained uncredited for the finished film. Okay, we're on page 170 of 246, so that's 74, 76. I can barely do math. With 3 hours, 15 minutes, and nearly half a minute in. My brain is starting to melt. Yeah. To prepare for the role of Kyle, Anton Yelchin studied Michael Biehn's performance in the first movie a few times to get the character's mannerisms and characteristics. And I do think that shows. Yeah, it is just that it's the characterization. Now, let's see. Yeah, earlier drafts of the script, before rewrites, focused a lot more on just Marcus Wright and Kyle Reese. I could see that work. If there was more time there, maybe they could have made Kyle Reese be Kyle Reese. Anyway, with John Connor making an appearance in the last few scenes, Christian Bale was first offered the role of Marcus, but took more interest in the character of John Connor, so rewrites took place to give him more of a substantial role throughout the film, which was a very bad idea. Let's see. I guess that might be about what I have in the trivia. Oh, right, yeah, there's this. Yeah, several shots focus on the feet of the characters. This is trademark of director James Cameron, who made the first two Terminator films. And this includes an early shot where John gets off a helicopter and fires his rifle at a Terminator skull at his feet. I don't know if I like it, but this is one case where I do want to note, this is a reversal of one of the first shots of T2, where it is a Terminator foot crushing a human skull. Obviously, a human foot is not going to be crushing a robot skull, but yeah, that is the... Now, let's see. Yeah, this is the first Terminator film to receive a PG-13 rating. The previous films were R. According to director McGee, he never aimed for a specific rating and simply shot the movie the way he intended with full support from the studio. The film was initially rated R, but they found by deleting just one scene where Marcus Singleton injures a couple of thugs, they could get a PG-13 rating. Reasoning that The Dark Knight 2008 had been released the previous year with a PG-13 rating without feeling compromised in any way, they decided that the lower rating was appropriate. Another scene that was omitted was a topless scene for Blair Williams from Bloodgood that felt a bit gratuitous. I would agree. Let's see. And both scenes were restored in the extended edition of the movie, so yeah. Batman doesn't need to use as much violence. It's canon that Batman doesn't kill and doesn't use guns. The Terminator, which this movie is named after, is a robot that kills people, you know, in sometimes in very brutal ways. The kind of things that are in the first two movies that are not in T3 and T4, the Terminator jamming his hand into the stomach or the chest of one of the thugs at the start of T1 and pulling his hand back out, showing it completely covered in blood. And the Terminator cutting all the skin off his arm, you know, in T2 to prove that he's a robot that has the same arm as the one that Miles has been studying. I do think that, you know, I think that Genesis gets away with it decently, but I really don't think. I think in the year 2015, I don't think it was very likely to get an R rating on a really big thing, you know, because a lot of the really big properties were PG-13, you know. You've got Hobbit, you've got MCU, Star Trek, Star Wars. That was 2017 that started back up, right? Or was it? I don't remember exactly, but I don't think it was realistic to expect Genesis to. But in 2009, there were some action movies that still had an R rating. Let's see. Obviously, not the Batman trilogy. Crap. I can think of. Well, certainly there's Street Kings from 2008, which I realize it's not a big franchise film. And yeah, I'm almost certain there were action movies being made around this time that had R ratings, even though the time had already somewhat been, you know, pretty. Oh right, and Star was speculated to be the female rebel soldier who's killed in the flashback sequence in the Terminator. I could see that, but yeah, Kate says, "I'm a doctor, not an engineer, like Bones from Star Trek." Ooh, ooh, I say. Alex Zane said the film was Arnie light, and Arnold Schwarzenegger said he would have done the film, but he had his hands full being governor and didn't have time to take on any new challenges. Someone sounds awful defensive. I do think it is quite ridiculous that, like, there's the like, how could you possibly expect him? He's a political, like he was like governor at the time, right? I Why would you expect him to be in a movie also? But anyway. And right, that's yeah. I'm gonna, it's weird how on IMDb, like, they might spoil other movies without like warning about it at all. Like that, yeah. The trivia for this movie spoils what's it called? The movie. Ah, crap. Total Recall. That's right. Originally, there were rumors of an ending where the real John Connor dies at the hands of the T-800. Realizing that John has become the symbol of the war against machines, the resistance leaders decide to have Marcus assume Connor's identity by grafting John's skin over Marcus's body. The idea that anybody could be a hero, in this case John Connor, and that, excuse me, not only is Judgment Day inevitable, but John Connor, and more importantly, the Resistance is as well. The idea got out on the internet when the script was leaked, but after overwhelmingly negative feedback from fans, this ending was scrapped. I didn't realize it was about bad feedback. I heard that it was quote unquote only that people knew that they changed it, so they didn't want people going into the movie knowing the ending. Now, in the heart transplant ending used in the final release, yeah, it was a reshoot. Original Marcus just died due to the damage sustained in the fight with T-800. Connor's wounds received in the fight were not fatal either. However, this was changed. The transplant could be added in order to give Marcus a more emotional departure. I mean, that is kind of just bland and boring, even though what they changed it to was incredibly stupid, so I get why they changed it. Right, and that brings us to IMDb goofs. I'm not sure there are very many in this that I'm actually going to be commenting on, but I just want to say, just in case. But yeah, like 2000, 2008, 2009, there were some. Let's see. Right, yeah, there's a. This is listed on plot holes. Skynet is able to track and destroy the Resistance Command submarine when it broadcasts the signal, but they are unable to trace Connor's signal when he is making his radio broadcasts. And he's their #2 target, so yeah. And Marcus is viewing the world in infrared from the time he's revived onwards, yet he does not realize there's something wrong with that and still presumes he's human. Whoops. How do you, like, it's true. He does. It's, wow. Let's see. Yeah, and just, you know, in the interest of fairness, apparently the only consequence of a nuclear holocaust would be the destruction of the cities without any residual radiation. The only byproduct of the Holocaust are fires burning up randomly several years later in the middle of nowhere without any apparent reason or sustaining burnable debris. Yeah, actually, yeah, that's kind of sort of weird. But yeah, every future war scene in every Terminator movie basically ignores all the residual radiation. Now, let's see. The Resistance plan to end the war using signals to disrupt. Yeah, all of these are plot holes. Disrupt the Terminator's communication with the Channel Command. John Connor should have known this plan would fail, as he had already witnessed several Terminators continue to operate after having been cut off when they traveled back in time in the previous movies. Huh. Yeah. That's absolutely true. That doesn't make any sense. Wow. Yeah, it's just they don't. It's so stupid. So much about this movie is so stupid. Now, oh, and apparently these goofs have spoilers. Sometimes they don't actually note when that's. But yeah, here's another plot hole. In the original film, Connery says he couldn't identify the Terminator until it attacked Sarah Connor, as the T-800 model looks human. However, as shown in the climax of this film, he has previously seen the 101 Arnie model Terminator and should have recognized it on sight. Yep. It's just, and it didn't have to be that way. It would be so easy for it to, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, and here's the, I noted here, I do appreciate that they talk past Marcus. They no longer see him as human. Kate and John have both shown empathy for people who were hurt, so it's specifically because they think of him as a machine now that they talk about him like that. And yeah, just Calorie says, "Come with me if you want to live." This is really not something that you should ever have to say during the war in a war scene. In the original movie, the line is something that helps Sarah focus, come back out of her daze, which she was put in by seeing something happen that she had never expected to. Someone that looks like a regular person would just walk up and start shooting people in a public place. You know, but here it's just, yeah. What is it that makes us human? It's not something you can program. You can't put it into a chip. It's the strength of the human heart. The difference between us and machines. How unbelievably hokey. And oh right, sorry. We've moved on to quotes now. Now, let's see. I guess there might not be more in the quotes section. And we have reached page 196. We're 50 pages out. So let's see, there's going to be Wikipedia. I guess that's it. Now, alternate versions, soundtracks, connections. Why did they change movie connections to connections? I mean, I realize not all of them are movies, but like, I mean, they still call them the website International Movie Database. They have a bunch of stuff listed that's not movies. So why not, anything in the connections that's not a movie is something that's on the site that's not a movie. So, you know, international, maybe it should be international, international? Yeah, International Media Database instead. Anyway, internet, whatever. Yes, Film Brain's review about the, let's see, yeah, and this means war. That's the, yeah. Yeah, Film Brain doesn't go into details about Terminator Salvation, but I still absolutely love rewatching his review. And yeah, to briefly compare what he says about the action in that film to how it is this. Yeah, he describes what happens in an action scene, and then he says, I think everything is happening so quick it's hard to tell. The director is known as an action director, but this set piece is terrible. Shots are cut too fast, the camera's constantly moving, so there's no spatial geography. The whole thing just feels rushed. You might as well have held up a sign saying, action scene here, for all the coherency it has. And there's flashing lights as part of the bad action scene, and inept action sequences that feel slept on, he says. But yeah, so some like in this, but worse than in this. But yeah, the oh yeah, Death Race, isn't that like 2008 or something? Resident Evil 3 also, 2007. Both of those movies are rated R. I'm almost 100% certain. So let's see. Yeah. There's this Watch Mojo video from 2014 called Top 10 Actors Recreated Special Effects. Arnold recreated for Terminator Salvation is number 3. They say in that video, 2014, Arnold Schwarzenegger is too old to play a killer robot, and yet he did so the year after. And I'm not sure if he's playing a killer robot in Terminator 6. It looks maybe like he's playing a human, and maybe they use that human as the face for like the model for the robots. But it looks like he has action scenes from the Terminator 6 trailers, so whoops. I'm sorry, I do love that whoops. And we've reached the fact. I love that normally people have to add that. People have to make up that someone stupid says something like that. I mean, but with whoops and with please clap, like, these people, I mean, I guess please clap wasn't stupid. It was pathetic, but it wasn't stupid. But whoops, I mean, he's literally standing there on stage saying he can't remember. He has these 3 key focuses, and he can't remember the third one. And I think Ben Mankiewicz was the one who said, just make up the third one. Just say, and the third one is this. And then people can be like, it doesn't make sense for that to be the third one. But don't stand there in front of, what was it, 330 million Americans and say, I don't remember my own plan. Whoops. Just like, wow. From the fact, is James Cameron involved with this film at all? McGee talked to James Cameron in New Zealand when the latter was filming Avatar. There, Cameron told him about how when he was making Aliens following Ridley Scott, and how people were skeptical of him, much like McGee. They later had several phone calls talking at great lengths about the story, and Cameron suggested Sam Worthington, the star of Avatar, to be the Marcus character. I mean, I've said it before, but man, James Cameron is really nice about these things. Like, he knows that he's not going to write it, he's not going to direct it. There are a lot of people who would just be like, I don't want to have anything to do with it. But he's like, when I directed the critically acclaimed, massively well-loved movie, and we've reached Wikipedia, Aliens, some people didn't think that I was that good, but that was, of course, as they explain in the commentary track for that movie, because people hadn't, when they started working on that movie, the Terminator hadn't been proven to be, this really huge success yet. So they were, yeah, and oh right, yeah, this says the Wikipedia plot summary. Marcus enters the base interfaces with the computer and disables perimeter defenses. So that's why no one is there to kill John with prisoners, I guess. I was wondering if that holds up, but ultimately, I mean, it's still supposed to be a trap. He's still supposed to go after Kyle Reese all the way into the prison, and then there's still only a single Terminator there, instead of just, like, you know what would have worked? Just, like, gas, lasers, just like have Kyle Reese be stuck in the cell, have the door only open when John goes all the way up to it, then have a door, then have the excuse me, yeah, the door opens when John goes all the way up to it, and then a door closes behind John, who's now so close to, who was close to the door, otherwise it wouldn't open, and then gas fills the room. That, I mean, just it's really not difficult. Anyway, and we are now on page 230. 230 out of 246, so we're getting there. The let's see. Right, they cast Common as Barnes, and I mean, it's not really, he wasn't really known as an actor before this. I mean, I think he does okay, but let's see. Now, right, yeah, here we go. You survived McGee on John's struggles to become a believer. You survive the nuclear holocaust, and you crawl out of the hole after 3 to 5 years and say, well, I know what's going on. I'm the one. Some SAS guy isn't going to say, where do I go, boss? He'd say, shut the F up and get in line. And that is true, John, it's not like John was a military commander or something. He was some nobody who'd been hiding, So, yeah, the military, which, Ashton is military. He was military before John, he was military before the war, before the nukes. So, yeah. I'm going to use the example I usually use for this sort of thing. I can follow that logic, but presumably the characters also go to the bathroom, and that's not something I want to see on screen either. It's just frustrating. It's like we expect to see him as this great military leader, and then the movie just doesn't give us that. And yeah, I accept that explanation as logical, but it's not what. Again, does anybody want to see this? Does anybody want John to just constantly, yeah, anyway. Now, let's see. Yes, so, in the early script drafts, John was a secondary character. James Milden explained Ben-Hur was influenced by Jesus Christ, but it was his story. Much in that way, this new main character will be influenced by John Connor. The original ending was to have John killed and his image kept alive by the Resistance by grafting his skin onto Marcus's cybernetic body. Marcus would then have murdered Kate, Barnes, Kyle, and Starr. That's very dark, but it could have been very interesting. It's somewhat similar to the original, which is also very dark, but this is more bitter. This sounds like an ending that says humanity loses, and let's see. In Spoonie's video, he says that means that humanity would have to fight on without their chosen one. The ending of the first movie does see Kyle die, but because Sarah is now pregnant with John, humanity is saved. And it was at this point in noting Starr, the little girl, the 9-year-old mute girl, gets shot in the final scene, and the pregnant Kate Brewster gets killed. I mean, I realize that the first movie said retroactive abortion, but this is just going too far. killing children in movies, especially like a fetus, should not be done casually. Wait, was this the ending they were going to use when it was supposed to be the start of a trilogy? I guess if so, it, it was then they were going to use, let's see, since that would what they were going to use, and this was supposed to be the start of the trilogy when they were making it, I guess maybe they were going to use time travel to undo the events of this movie. If some soldiers survived the ending of this movie, even with a John Connor-faced killer robot, and they managed to time travel back in time to before the end of this movie, maybe they're going to pull up Back to the Future too. I could kind of respect that, but just no, don't, don't shoot a pregnant woman, and don't shoot a 9-year-old. Just yeah, not in real life, not in a movie. If you're ever going to do it in a movie or a video game or something, you better have an incredibly good reason. Now, let's see. Yeah, so the the filmmakers consulted with many scientists about the effects of an abandoned world and nuclear winter. G cited Mad Max 2, the original Star Wars trilogy, and Children of Men, as well as the novel The Road and its visual influences. He instructed his cast to read the latter, as well as doing a stream of electric sheep. Like Children of Men, McGee would storyboard scenes so that it would be edited together to resemble a seamless, continuous shot. It took 2 weeks to film a 2-minute shot of Connor getting caught up in a bombing in Skynet base where he discovers plans for the T-800. I like the ambition and, excuse me, again, it's well done from the technical standpoint, but it's nowhere near as effective in this movie as it is in Children of Men. I think when I first watched this movie in theaters, I realized it was similar to Children of Men in that regard. And while that kind of thing is, of course, always impressive from a technical standpoint, I did immediately question why they felt it would particularly make sense in these circumstances. And yeah, I don't like. Part of the thing with Children of Men is that, I mean, on some level, it essentially does kind of feel like you're watching, I don't know, you could say maybe you're watching a documentary, but maybe more to, maybe more to the point, like you, the individual audience member, is right there, right next to the characters. You know, the other characters never talk directly to the camera like the audience, but yeah, it feels like you're right there. And this movie doesn't do that, you know, consistently, so it doesn't make sense. You can't, like, the thing it still has is that, you know, it kind of tricks the audience by making us feel like, wow, it's not cutting. I guess this must really be happening. This incredible thing is happening. They just filmed it when, you know, because at first, you know, when like when they started making movies and they cut, it tricked the audience. People thought that they were seeing something that they weren't seeing because the cutting, the editing made people connect images and imagine things that they weren't seeing. And by 2007, when Children of Men came out, the audience had gotten used to that. So instead they figured, let's film it as if it's a continuous shot and we'll edit it together. Now, the majority of the machines were designed by Martin Lang, a crew member on Cameron's Titanic, Ghost of the Abyss. G described many of the machines as having an H.R. Giger influence. I can see that in the designs. I'm just not sure it works for the Terminator franchise as it does for the Alien franchise. I really, really wish that was, because I can kind of see it. Yeah. If the Hydrobots were not in a Terminator movie, I think I might like them a lot more. But at the end of the day, that's not what the Terminator franchise has been. It's more these like kind of dehumanized machines, like again like a big tank. It very specifically has tank treads. There were people in 1984 who saw that in the movie and were like, oh god, tanks. because maybe not they themselves, but like their ancestors had maybe fought in, World War II, and yeah, tanks were horrifying in World War II. So, and you have these flying things that also, yeah, just, but the moment that you give, that's the thing, they don't have that much personality in the first movie, you know, but in this, they've got personality just to spare, and I think that's a mistake. The part of the appeal is that there's not that much. I mean, I don't know if I use the word subtle, but they're not kind of the they're not gratuitously detailed in the first two movies, and then in this they kind of are. That's part of why people say that huge robot makes them think of Transformers, because it does. It doesn't look like something that belongs in Terminator. So yeah. Now let's see. I was wondering, how do the Moto Terminators get humans back to the Harvesters, or do they just wait for the Harvesters to get there eventually? And really, what do the Moto Terminators even do, other than, I mean, they catch up to them, but the guns they have seem, I don't know, I don't think I saw them fire a gun that was useful for slowing down a human. I saw them fire guns that could destroy trucks and such, but that's not very useful for. Oh wait, sorry, attack. Sorry, they're not there to. No, but no, sorry. This says they are very big and slow, so they use Moto Terminators to capture humans. That's what it says, and I don't see how they could. Right. So the film features rubber-skinned T-600 and T-700 robots. McG interpreted Kyle Reese's description in the original film of the T-600 to be an easy spot by making them tall and bulky. I mean, that is technically one way to interpret that. I mean, it's blindingly obvious that he's referring to the fact that rubber skin does not look like human skin. He's talking about infiltrators, humanoid robots that are supposed to be able to pass for human. The T-600 scene in this movie is obviously not what Kyle Reese talks about. But whatever, make whatever rationalizations you want or need to make. It's so stupid. Again, if that's what you want to do, then Terminator is not the franchise for you. There are other franchises that have big and bulky robots that just, it's so stupid. Why do they hire people who don't understand what they're working with? It's so, like, he says, the 600 series had rubber skin, we spotted them easy. In what universe does that mean? Why would he be saying it like that if they're also big and bulky and don't look human? Which also makes the fact that Marcus is completely tricked by one even more baffling. Hmm. Now, yeah, this part says, oh, they might as well cut the. Let's see. Yeah, the topless scene, if that's all that they had to cut for a PG-13, they basically might as well do so. The first two movies had substantial blood and violence, and it would be very difficult to recut to PG-13 without losing a lot. So this isn't the same as that. But again, it feels like rationalization, because the stuff that was added back in, I get why it would get an R rating, and I do think some of it makes the movie a better movie, and I really think it's too bad they made that decision. I think ultimately Genesis was probably going to be a PG-13 no matter what, because that's where the money is by, I think the new one isn't. I think the new one is going to be an R, and that's because there are people dedicated to making it an R who have the you know, who have enough power to do so. It's the same as with, you know, Deadpool. And probably also, if Deadpool 1 and 2 had not been so successful, I'm not sure they would necessarily have gotten to make an R-rated Terminator movie today, you know. But I mean, they even got the Deadpool director for the movie, so yeah. And at 3 hours and 50 minutes, so under 4 hours, this is still. I mean, yeah, I guess this is about average for one of my videos on a movie that I have a lot to say about, and that there is a lot of information about on the web pages that I look. So, yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's just you really wish that they had just had something to do with Kyle. You could so easily remove him and just basically, yeah, it really is almost criminal that they changed the movie to have more Connor and less Marcus and Kyle, because that really completely. I mean, the things you see John do are things that anyone could do. Like, he tests the signal on a Hydrobot. Then he tests the signal on a hunter killer in the field. Let's see. He chases Marcus when Marcus tries to flee the camp. He makes a couple of tactical decisions. He yells at other people on the radio. And then at the end of the movie, he does the hostage rescue thing. But just, yeah, it didn't need to be John. And it so clearly wasn't John's story anymore. You know, I think that's Spoonie talked about, that the interesting story about John is before Judgment Day, basically, because after that point, he's an important person, but he's not that interesting of a character anymore, because he's just the perfect military leader guy, you know. But there's not that much compelling drama for the character anymore, and that's why they decided to focus on Marcus and Kyle. And yeah, I think I have said everything that I want to say about the movie. So I hope you enjoyed watching, as I enjoyed watching, and definitely enjoyed recording. And I'll catch you next time.